LoveLore Library. Old Buffon breathed a sigh of relief and said, "If it weren't for my kung fu being too inferior, I would have volunteered to help Master's wife deal with those two bastards." As Yang Ming was talking, he suddenly saw Malajben's hand become a little dishonest. He wanted to hug Shu Ya's waist from behind. Yang Ming was suddenly anxious. He didn't wait to say anything to Wang Xiaoyan. He quickly stood up and walked in the direction of Shu Ya. "Miss Shu, hello. I have admired you for a long time. I don't know if I can do you the honor of dancing with me." Although Yang Ming's clothes were extremely ordinary, his movements were very elegant. Shu Ya was feeling uncomfortable and at a loss. Suddenly, she heard a very familiar voice in her ear. She was stunned and looked up, but she found that Yang Ming was looking at her with a smile. Shu Ya was dumbfounded at the time. She couldn't believe her eyes. How can I meet Yang Ming here? In this foreign country, Shu Ya could meet the person she missed day and night. This made it difficult for her to accept for a while. She even thought that she was in a trance, and she had a feeling of hallucination and auditory hallucination. Shu Ya shook her head and felt that the pressure of her work during this time was really too great. She had hallucinations. Although she missed Yang Ming, this kind of trance was not a good phenomenon. It was the precursor of mental weakness. Therefore, Shu Ya didn't think that Yang Ming appeared in front of her, but she thought that she really missed Yang Ming. Moreover, at this time, if Yang Ming could be around, he would definitely help her out. That was why such a situation happened. "Who are you?" Malajben was about to successfully hug Shu Ya's waist, but he was interrupted by Yang Ming. He suddenly became furious. He stood up suddenly and no longer cared about his demeanor. He pointed at Yang Ming's nose and roared, "Do you know who I am? You actually dare to ruin my good deed. Who the hell are you?" Yang Ming didn't have a good impression of Malajben. When he saw Malajben yelling at him, his face immediately sank. "This is the young master of the city's mayor, Mark Vader, Malajben." At this time, a follower brought by Malajben immediately rushed up. This was the opportunity for him to show his skills. He was worried that there was no chance to appear. After this minor character said this line, he looked at Yang Ming proudly with a smug smile. Generally speaking, when he finished this sentence, no one dared to do it again. Although in the European political system, a city mayor couldn't cover the sky with one hand, people in the upper class knew that the mayor didn't represent a person, but a very powerful force. If each mayor, governor, and even president didn't have one or even a few strong supporters and big consortiums behind them, they couldn't get votes. Therefore, the name of the mayor's young master was still quite scary. After all, no one was willing to provoke such a powerful person. "Oh." Yang Ming glanced at Malajben and said faintly, "This motherfucker young master, I hate it when others point fingers in front of me. This is a public place, so I won't make you disabled, but I hope there won't be a next time. You." Although Malajben didn't know what motherfucker meant, it didn't sound good. Moreover, the most infuriating thing was that Yang Ming said what he wanted to say. If this wasn't a public place, he would have already asked his men to clean up Yang Ming. Would he still allow Yang Ming to point fingers in front of him? As a matter of fact, several of his men were good fighters in the underground boxing arena. One punch could probably beat this Oriental man in front of him into a meat patty. "As I said, I don't want you to do anything to me. My patience is limited." Yang Ming glared fiercely at Malajben, hoping that he could stop. Otherwise, Yang Ming didn't mind making him unable to take care of himself here. Malajben was about to explode. He had not suffered this kind of humiliation in this city, so he was a little anxious. Regardless of the public place, he waved his hand and ordered his men to take Yang Ming out to fix him. Savon Geese saw that something was going to happen, so he quickly stopped Malajben and coughed. He meant that we have more important plans. Don't create more problems. Malajben also realized this. He frowned and endured this resentment. He snorted, if it weren't for Savon Geese, would never let you go easily today. Okay, now you hurry up and get out. Yang Ming glanced at Savon Geese coldly, and then said, and you, that stupid plague chicken death, I am very unhappy with you. I hope you will pay attention to me. I don't want to kill people, but I don't mind killing you. Savon Geese's face suddenly changed. Just now, it was Malajben who was insulted and threatened by Yang Ming. It was nothing for him, but now it was different. Now it was his turn, so he couldn't sit still. However, when he thought that there was still something important to do, he had to endure it. Miss Shu, will you not give me this face? Yang Ming smiled and once again extended his hand to Shuya, who was sitting there stupidly. Shuya was completely dumbfounded. Until Yang Ming warned Malajben and Savon Geese, Shuya realized that the person in front of her was really Yang Ming. Yang Ming really appeared here. Shuya felt that every time she encountered difficulties, Yang Ming would suddenly appear, just like the last time on the Alice. This time, it was the same. This made Shuya feel a little sweet in her heart. She felt that she and Yang Ming had telepathy. She happily extended her hand and shook Yang Ming's hand. Her mouth moved. She wanted to say something, but she was stopped by Yang Ming's eyes. Yang Ming didn't want to create any trouble for Shuya. Although there were no reporters here, it was better to be careful. I will go to the bathroom to wipe my face and touch up my makeup. Shuya whispered. You are very beautiful even without makeup. Yang Ming smiled. That won't do. I always need to put on some blush in public. Otherwise, when I am too pale when I take photos, it will be scary. Shuya shook her head and explained. Hee, I don't understand these. Then you go. Do you want me to accompany you? Yang Ming didn't understand these professional knowledge, but Shuya must have some reason to say so, so Yang Ming no longer insisted. I am going to the women's bathroom. How are you going to follow me? Shuya rolled her eyes at Yang Ming and smiled. Well, you go and come back quickly. I will wait for you over there. As Yang Ming said this, he pointed to the position on old Buffon's side. Okay. Shuya reluctantly let go of Yang Ming's hand and walked in the direction of the bathroom. Shuya didn't know why, but she suddenly felt a little dizzy. She was a little confused, so she wanted to go to the bathroom to breathe in the outside air and wash her face with cold water to wake herself up. After all, she had to deal with it anyway before she could go back to the hotel to rest. Shuya walked quickly in the direction of the bathroom, and Malajben and Savon Geese obviously noticed Shuya's move. Savon Geese was suddenly delighted. The drug worked. It seems that Shuya is going to the bathroom. Let's find a way to follow her and then take her to the car. Hee, great. Malajben was also excited. The two sneaked out from the back door of the venue and then quickly ran in the direction of the bathroom. Yang Ming's gaze had always been on Shuya, but because Shuya went to the women's bathroom, Yang Ming had to take back his gaze. It was fine to look at Shuya. After all, she would be his woman sooner or later, but it was not good to look at others. Yang Ming was not a voyeur. His heart was very normal. At this time, it was somewhat inappropriate to look again. Chapter 1131. How was the exchange just now? Looking at your affectionate look, I am a little envious. Wang Xiaoyan glanced at Yang Ming and said. Really? Yang Ming was a little embarrassed. I didn't pay attention at the time. It can't be like what Wang Xiaoyan said, right? If it is, it won't be good if outsiders see it. Hee, I'm lying to you. Wang Xiaoyan said, "At most, it's just I flirting. Isn't that the same?" Yang Ming was a little helpless. Old Buffon just noticed that there seemed to be a little ambiguity between Yang Ming and Shuya, but after all, it was far away, and he couldn't see it clearly. Now that Wang Xiaoyan said so, he felt that it seemed to be true. He couldn't help but admire his master. Malajben and Savon Geese were entangled for a long time, and Miss Shuya was not tempted. When his master came out, he just reached out his hand, and Miss Shuya danced with his master. This is enough to show that his master's charm is infinite. "Right, what are you going to do with the two bastards?" asked Wang Xiaoyan. "You mean Ma La Bai and Ji Feng Dai?" Yang Ming waved his hand. "Let them be. This is a public place. If I meet them outside in the future, I will just teach them a lesson." Ma La Bai. Ji Feng Dai. Wang Xiaoyan was stunned, and then she laughed out of breath. "Ha ha 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 ha. Yang Ming, you are really something. You can even think of this kind of homophone. Haha, is master an ordinary person?" Old Buffon was proficient in Chinese culture, and naturally understood the meaning of Yang Ming's two sentences. He also laughed and echoed, "These two names are too appropriate." Although Old Buffon was proficient in Chinese culture, he did not learn the essence of it, such as the culture of flattery. Now Old Buffon's flattery was a bit too obvious, making Yang Ming a little dumbfounded. "By the way, where did Shuya go? Why don't you bring her over to meet me?" Wang Xiaoyan suddenly remembered that Yang Ming came back by himself, so she asked. Shuya said that she was a little dizzy. Maybe it was jet lag, so she went to the bathroom to wash her face and get some fresh air. "She will be back in a while," Yang Ming said. Okay, then let her come over later." Wang Xiaoyan nodded, and suddenly said with some surprise, "Huh? Where are those two fellows? Where did it go? Which two guys? Are you talking about Mama La Bitch and Stupid Plague Chicken Death?" Yang Ming was stunned and asked. "I've been paying attention to the two of them. I felt that they were sneaking around, so I wanted to find a chance to teach them a lesson. I didn't pay attention to them, so how did they disappear?" Wang Xiaoyan said. "What? Disappeared?" Yang Ming was shocked and stood up. "Oh no, they may be waiting for an opportunity to make a move on Suya." After Yang Ming finished speaking, he quickly ran to the exit of the venue, and Wang Xiaoyan followed behind Yang Ming. Shuya felt a little dizzy, so she came to the bathroom. She thought it would be better, but she found that her eyelids were getting heavier and heavier, and her footsteps became heavier. It seemed that it was difficult to lift them up. Shuya took a deep breath and leaned her body against the door of the bathroom. She wanted to call for help, but she found that she had no strength to speak. She was in a daze, and her eyes became blurred. She slumped to the ground. "All right." Malajben saw it clearly in the distance. He clapped his hands and said to Savon Geese, "It's done. Let's go. Get her to the car. Don't let others see her," said Savon Geese. The two men walked forward quickly, then picked up Shuya and quickly ran in the direction of the underground parking lot. Because they were afraid of being seen by others, they did not dare to waste time on Shuya at this moment. They could only rush to the car first. "What are you looking at? Why don't you come and help?" Malajben yelled at one of his men. Yes. The man quickly said and helped Malajben to open the elevator door. They went in and rushed in the direction of the underground parking lot. Yang Ming knew from Malajben's previous actions and eyes that he had been coveting Shuya for a long time. If he met Shuya in a place where no one was around at this time, the consequences were simply unimaginable. Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan ran out. Old Buffon, as a disciple of the two, naturally followed and ran out quickly. When old Buffon ran, LoveLore did not know what happened. He did not care about the matter at hand and quickly followed old Buffon. Patriarch Buffon, wait for me. What happened? LoveLore shouted as he ran. But how could old Buffon have time to care about him? Although old Buffon did not understand why Yang Ming cared so much about Shuya, it seemed that the master's wife was not only not jealous, but also cared about Shuya's safety. This was really weird. In addition to admiration, old Buffon did not dare to neglect. He also knew that Yang Ming cared about Shuya. If something happened to Shuya in his own territory, then old Buffon simply had no face to see Yang Ming, his master. Yang Ming strode to the bathroom, but he stopped halfway because Yang Ming scanned the bathroom with his special ability. There was no one inside. Yang Ming's heart suddenly felt cold, and a bad idea floated in his mind. However, he could not panic in this situation, because even if Shuya was caught by Malajben and Sevan Geese, she must not have gone far. She should be around here. Thinking of this, Yang Ming quickly searched the vicinity with his special ability. When Yang Ming's gaze stopped at the underground parking lot, he suddenly stagnated. Yang Ming saw that Malajben and Sevan Geese were carrying Shuya into a Mercedes-Benz RV. Yang Ming saw such a scene and immediately shouted to Wang Xiaoyan next to him, downstairs, parking lot. Yang Ming was afraid that Malajben and Sevan Geese would drive away directly. In that case, although he could catch up with them, if they did anything to Shuya in the car during this time, then Yang Ming would regret it for life. So Yang Ming went crazy. Without waiting for the elevator, he ran from the emergency passage to the underground parking lot. When Yang Ming ran to the parking lot, Malajben and Sevan Geese had already entered the RV. At the door of the RV, there were two bodyguards guarding. Yang Ming ran to the RV and was stopped by the two people. What are you doing? Yang Ming did not have time to pay attention to the two people. He gently pushed aside with his hand, and one of the bodyguards staggered. He stumbled and almost knocked his head on the butt of the car. The other bodyguard immediately became anxious and reached for his pocket. Because most countries in Europe and the United States did not have strict management of firearms, it was common for private bodyguards to carry guns. Yang Ming did not want to do anything to these two bodyguards. After all, they were paid to help others. Stopping him did not represent their own will, but they completely obeyed the instructions of Malajben and Sevan Geese. Seeing that another bodyguard wanted to touch the gun, Yang Ming suddenly frowned. Just as he wanted to make a move, he saw a transparent dagger had been inserted into the neck of another bodyguard. Yang Ming suddenly smiled bitterly. He only wanted to stun the bodyguard, but he did not expect Wang Xiaoyan to directly stab him to death. It seemed that little girl Wang Xiaoyan was more indifferent to human life than him. Yang Ming had to admire that this little girl was more ruthless than him. Wang Xiaoyan pulled out the dagger without changing her expression. The bodyguard's neck was bleeding, and he fell to the ground. Obviously, he could not survive. Wang Xiaoyan was originally an assassin. The position of her attack was often fatal, not giving the opponent a chance to breathe. However, since Wang Xiaoyan killed the bodyguard, Yang Ming had no pity. As a bodyguard, he had to be prepared to die at any time. This was understandable. Yang Ming did not have time to kill these bodyguards, but he pulled the door hard and found that the door had been locked from the inside. Although Yang Ming had the lily key in his pocket, his mind was blank at the moment. He lifted his leg and kicked the door. Bang! The solid door of the RV was dented by Yang Ming's kick. Old Buffon secretly clicked his tongue. He thought, is this still a human? Such a thick steel plate can actually be dented by kicking. He couldn't help but think of the Terminator, a weirdo who was not afraid of being hit by a car. However, old Buffon was still very excited. If he could learn the essence of Master, then he would be invincible. The old people at his age had to think about whether they could break their bones if they fell when they went out, but old Buffon thought about kicking the steel plate with his feet. Only old Buffon himself understood the gap and sense of achievement during this period. As for Wang Xiaoyan killing people, old Buffon did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. These things were trivial. He did not need to speak. His family would settle it for him. Old Buffon was like a godfather behind the scenes, controlling the economy, politics, and underworld of Europe. Bang! He kicked again. The door of the RV was dented again. The connection between the door lock and the door had been deformed. Obviously, there were signs of breaking. Savon geese, what the hell is this guy doing? The sweat on Malajben's forehead suddenly fell down. When Yang Ming had a conflict with the bodyguards, Malajben had seen it clearly in the RV. At first, he did not feel anything wrong, but when Wang Xiaoyan killed a bodyguard with a knife, Malajben was shocked. Although he had killed others before, it was done under very secret circumstances. After that, he spent a lot of money and connections to settle it. However, it was the first time that he had seen someone kill someone in public like Wang Xiaoyan did. It was the first time that he had seen someone kill someone in public. Especially when he saw that Wang Xiaoyan did not even frown after killing people, he was even more scared. Because such a person was a veteran killer at first glance, there was no tension after killing people. His own background was so strong. After he raped a girl to death, he was so scared that he did not sleep well for a month. Until the matter was settled, he still did not dare to go out for a long time. Now, looking at other people compared to him, he simply did not call it killing. She was really ruthless. Originally, he was surprised enough by this, but after seeing Yang Ming kicking the door, Malajben was really scared. Although Malajben was shocked by Wang Xiaoyan's murder, he was not scared to the point of panic. After Yang Ming kicked the door, he also made fun of Yang Ming for being a fool. This RV was bulletproof. How could it be so easy to dent it? Don't worry about what he does. Damn it. This guy is not human. Hurry up and drive away from here. Savon Geese was also scared. According to Yang Ming's kick, the door would definitely be kicked down in a few kicks. If he got on the RV and was kicked, wouldn't he be kicked to death? Thinking of this, Savon Geese could not sit still and quickly ordered the driver to drive. The driver was also scared at this time. When he heard Savon Geese's words, he quickly started the car. Yang Ming was worried about Suya's safety, so he did not think so much. At this time, when he heard the sound of the car engine, he was shocked and understood what they wanted to do. Yang Ming's mind immediately sobered up. He grabbed the bodyguard on the ground and took out a pistol that had not been used yet. He fired a shot at each of the RV's wheels. In an instant, the RV lost its balance and fell to the ground. Although it was still moving forward, it could not run at all. When Malajben saw this scene, he quickly took out the phone and dialed the number of the police. Hello, I am Malajben, the young master of the city's mayor, Mark Vader. I was attacked by thugs in the underground parking lot of the private clubhouse at XX Road. The situation is critical. Please leave and send someone to rescue. Malajben said in one breath. Now he had to ask for help from the police because Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan were too fierce. With the pistol in his hand, Yang Ming remembered that it was more convenient to open the door lock with a pistol than with his feet, so he aimed at the door lock and fired 2 shots. Although the RV was bulletproof, the lock was not bulletproof. After 2 shots, the lock was destroyed. Yang Ming kicked again, and the entire door was immediately kicked down. Malajben and Savon Geese looked at everything that happened in front of them in horror. The two of them were used to being unruly. When they went out, they were accompanied by bodyguards. They did not encounter any dangerous situations at all. This was the first time they encountered such a situation. "Where is Shuya?" Yang Ming rushed into the car and shouted at Malajben and Sevon Geese, who were at a loss. However, there was no need for them to answer. Yang Ming had already seen Shuya lying on a sofa in the RV at the moment, motionless. Yang Ming's heart was cold. He grabbed Malajben's hair and pulled him up. "What did you do to her?" Malajben was in pain and yelled, "Let go. My dad is the mayor of this city, Mark Vader. Do you know what you are doing?" How could Yang Ming care about who his dad was? Now, Yang Ming was no longer the high school student Yang Ming. When Yang Ming dealt with Wang Jitao, he would take into account Wang Shifan's background. But now, even if the King of Heaven came, Yang Ming would kill him without hesitation. Initially, Malajben did not speak, but this made Yang Ming even angrier. Death is at hand, and he still doesn't know how to beg for mercy. He actually pretends to be badass in front of me, claiming that XXX is his father. Isn't this looking for death? Yang Ming slammed Malajben's head against the window of the RV. This time, Yang Ming was still not satisfied. He continued to crazily hit Malajben's head. It was easy for Yang Ming to kill Malajben, but Yang Ming was almost crazy at the moment. These people wanted to make a move on his beloved Suya, which made Yang Ming almost lose his mind. Yang Ming even forgot the killing technique and forgot the acupuncture point. He just blindly beat Malajben in the most primitive way of fighting. However, only this way, Yang Ming was still not satisfied. Yang Ming also realized that if this continued, it would only make Malajben die faster. Now, Yang Ming didn't want Malajben to die directly. Yang Ming wanted revenge, a crazy revenge. Yang Ming released his hand that grabbed Malajben's hair. Malajben didn't even stand up, and he fell to the ground. He had been knocked unconscious. Kaka. For crisp sounds, Malajben's limbs were broken by Yang Ming. Malajben howled and woke up with pain. Yang Ming knew that Malajben had lost his ability to act. He didn't need to care about him for the time being. He couldn't run away, so he walked quickly to Shuya and hugged her in his arms. "Littleya, are you awake?" "Littleya." Shuya's breathing was steady, but there was no sign of waking up. Yang Ming opened Shuya's eyelids and looked at it. Her pupils were a little dilated. It should be the phenomenon after taking drugs. Suddenly, he was angry. He turned around and continued to teach Sevon Geese. Sevon Geese was frightened by Malajben's tragic appearance. He wanted to take the opportunity to slip out of the car, but Wang Xiaoyan was at the side. How could she let him go? Seeing Yang Ming like this for Shuya, Wang Xiaoyan's heart was slightly sour. However, when she thought of the time in Country X, Yang Ming always thought about her safety. Many times, he was the one who took risks and didn't let her intervene. Wang Xiaoyan's heart was a lot more balanced. Maybe one day when I have an accident, Yang Ming will also be like this, right? However, such opportunities were obviously not too many. Wang Xiaoyan kicked out and just kicked Sevon Geese's crotch. Sevon Geese's eyeballs immediately protruded outward, and the cold sweat on his forehead came out. He covered his lower body and squatted on the ground with a twisted face. Wang Xiaoyan would not be as coy as the average girl. She would not attack these more embarrassing parts. Wang Xiaoyan was an assassin. She emphasized fatality, so she would also choose these fatal places. Old Buffon watched from behind, and he was even more sweaty. He opened his eyes today. Master's wife seemed to be more ruthless than Master. Here, the most anxious one was Lochloring. Shuya had an accident here, and it was done by Malajben and Sevan Geese, which made him very embarrassed. However, what was even more difficult was that old Buffon's guests actually participated in it. Not only did they kill a bodyguard of Malajben, but they also directly beat Malajben into a semi-disabled state. Lochlering's brain began to work quickly. He knew that this time, he must have a position. Malajben was already out of breath, and Sevan Geese was just kicked. Yang Ming kicked Sevan Geese's head and directly kicked him to the ground. What did you give Shuya? Although Yang Ming probably determined that Shuya was fine, it was still better to confirm it. If there were any harmful substances in it, Yang Ming would regret it for life. No. Nothing. Sevan Geese had learned from Malajben's mistake. He did not dare to be tough in front of Yang Ming. Yang Ming did not care about Mayor Mark Vader and probably did not care about his lieutenant governor's father, so Sevan Geese knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. He quickly lowered his voice and said, "It's just an ordinary sleeping pill." Yang Ming was relieved after listening to Sevan Geese's words. Is it really just an ordinary sleeping pill? It's true. I don't dare to lie to you. Sevan Geese just hoped that the police could hurry to rescue him at this moment. Otherwise, God knew how this Oriental man would deal with him. Don't move. The people inside, you have been surrounded. Suddenly, a few strong lights came from the underground parking lot. A team of heavily armed policemen rushed in. The leader was holding a microphone, and the others were holding guns. Please raise your hands and put down your weapons, or we will not be polite, shouted the leader. Ah! Sevan Geese seemed to see a savior and shouted, Bureau Chief Norton, it's you. Come and save me. I am Sevan Geese. Bureau Chief Norton received a call saying that the mayor's young master, Malajben, was attacked by the thugs. He did not dare to neglect and immediately led his men to rush over, but he did not expect that the lieutenant governor's young master, Sevan Geese, was also attacked. This gave Norton a headache. If things didn't go well, he might have to take the blame and resign. Thinking that the thugs attacked were actually the mayor's young master, Malajben, and the lieutenant governor's young master, Sevan Geese, he was furious. Aren't these people too blind? Can you provoke these two people? Norton shouted, the thugs inside, listen up. If you don't surrender, we'll shoot. Norton thought, anyway, if something happens, your father will take care of it. I can only be credited for saving people. It is impossible for me to make any mistakes. Since Lochlering had already made a decision, when he saw Norton shouting at this time, he was a little annoyed. He walked quickly to Norton's side and glared at him. Bureau Chief Norton, what are you doing? Ah. Mr. Lochlering, why are you here? Norton was in a mess just now, and he did not notice that Senator Lochlering was here. He was stunned when he saw him. This is my private club. I am naturally here. Although Lochlering was only a senator, his influence in the city was not small. It was unknown whether Mark Vader could be re-elected. At that time, it might be Lochlering who would come to power. Therefore, Norton did not dare to neglect Lochlering. It turns out that this is the case. I received a call from the mayor's young master, Malajben. They said that they were attacked by thugs. Norton was a bit baffled. Logically, it was impossible for Lochlering not to know about this. Why is he still standing here leisurely and not stopping it? Although Lochlering was not afraid of Mayor Mark Vader, he could not be careless about this kind of major event. Thugs? Oh, you are talking about thugs. Lochlering nodded and said faintly, indeed, Malajben and Sevan Geese kidnapped the celebrity, Shuya, as thugs. Now they are being stopped by the heroes who are acting courageously for justice. Ah. Norton's brain couldn't wrap around it for a while. Why are Malajben and Sevan Geese thugs? This doesn't seem right, right? But the people who beat the two have become heroes who are acting courageously for justice. Bureau Chief Norton, I advise you not to get involved in this matter. This is not something you can get involved in. Just stand aside and watch quietly. Lochlearing said coldly. Mr. Lochlearing, although you are a member of Parliament, you can't reverse black and white and stop us from handling the case. Norton felt that no matter what, he had to rescue Malajben and Sevan Geese first. Patriarch Old Buffon is standing over there. The people who beat Malajben and Sevan Geese are important guests of Patriarch Old Buffon. Patriarch Old Buffon said that he is just a follower of these two distinguished guests. Lochlearing saw that Bureau Chief Norton insisted on stopping it, so he had to tell him that Patriarch Old Buffon was here. What? Patriarch Buffon is also here. Bureau Chief Norton was shocked and looked in the direction that Lochlearing pointed. Sure enough, he saw that Patriarch Old Buffon was standing quietly, looking coldly at the Mercedes-Benz RV. I have said what I should say. You decide for yourself. Lochlearing snorted and said. Bureau Chief Norton regretted it for a while. What is this? If I knew that Patriarch Old Buffon was here, I would not have come. This is great. Although Mark Vader is my immediate boss, I can't offend Patriarch Old Buffon. Bureau Chief Norton, save me. Seeing that the police did not respond, Sevan Geese was anxious and shouted again. Yang Ming kicked Sevan Geese's face. Sevan Geese immediately made a woo sound, rolled his eyes, and couldn't speak. Norton didn't dare to go forward now. He quickly ordered his men to put down their guns, then he carefully walked forward and came to Old Buffon's side. He said with some subservience, Patriarch Buffon, hello. I'm the city's police chief, Norton. Old Buffon's eyes did not look at Norton. He just nodded slightly, indicating that he knew. Norton was not angry with Old Buffon's contempt, but he asked with some flattery, excuse me. Are the two young Oriental man and woman inside your friends? Friends? No. Old Buffon shook his head and said affirmatively. Oh. Norton was stunned. He thought, Patriarch Old Buffon doesn't know the people inside. Doesn't that mean that I can go in and arrest them? Thinking of this, Norton just wanted to take action, but he heard Old Buffon speak again. The next sentence made Norton break into a cold sweat. Fortunately, he was not so impulsive. I'm just their follower. Old Buffon added faintly. Hey! Norton was immediately dumbfounded. Patriarch Old Buffon is actually their follower. What kind of identity do these two Oriental people have? When Norton thought of this, he felt that this was not a place for him to stay for a long time. He quickly said, then, Patriarch Buffon, if there is nothing else, I will leave first. Wait. Arrest these two criminals who molested Miss Shuya in a while. Old Buffon pointed to Malajben and Sevan Geese, who were lying on the ground and could not move. Norton was shocked. He was asked to arrest the mayor's young master and the lieutenant governor's young master. He did not dare to do this, but he did not dare to disobey Old Buffon's order. He was suddenly in a dilemma. Old Buffon seemed to see Norton's embarrassment. After all, he was different from Lochlearing. He was the direct subordinate of Mark Vader. The consequences of this matter were very serious. If he did not handle it well, he would have to resign. Do as I say. It will not involve you. Old Buffon said faintly. Although Old Buffon did not continue to say it, Norton also heard Old Buffon's implication. If you do as I say, I will not involve you. If you don't do as I say, then I'm sorry, but you will definitely be involved. You will definitely be involved. However, with the assurance of patriarch old Buffon, Norton didn't have to worry about it. After all, he was the father of several children. He had to support his family. If he really did not have a job, his life would become extremely difficult. Now that old Buffon said this, it meant that old Buffon would protect him anyway. Even if he did not sit in the position of the police chief, old Buffon would definitely arrange a decent job for him. Therefore, Norton had no more worries. He quickly nodded and said, "Yes, I understand what to do." Although Yang Ming knew that old Buffon would not care if he killed these two people, Yang Ming saw that the police came, and he did not want to make things too big. However, he still kicked Malajben and Savon Geese's crotch. Malajben and Savon Geese were in great pain, but no one came forward to save them. At this time, Savon Geese probably understood that Chief Norton was afraid of the power of this Oriental man and did not dare to save him. Savon Geese was a very realistic person. He also understood that in the current situation, his resistance would be meaningless. He could only be beaten more, so he quickly begged for mercy. "I'm sorry, sir. I was wrong. I'm really sorry." Yang Ming snorted coldly. He was very contemptuous of Savon Geese's cowardly appearance, but at this time, it was time to stop. He had to stop. Behind his back, he could do whatever he wanted to Savon Geese, but in public, it was better to pay attention. "Mr. Sheriff, please take these two guys away. My friend Shuya was drugged by them. They intended to violate her, but I discovered and stopped them in time." Yang Ming turned to Norton and said. Yang Ming also heard the conversation between old Buffon and Norton clearly, so at this time, he directly issued an order to Norton. "Okay, sir. Please rest assured, I will definitely bring these two bastards to justice," Norton promised. The two people who had been beaten were escorted to the police car, and Norton also led the police officers to leave Lochlering's private clubhouse. The whole process was neat and tidy. The parking lot, which had been full of screams, was restored to its former tranquility. "Patriarch old Buffon, I'm very sorry that such a thing happened," Lochlering said apologetically. "Find a car and send Shuya to the hospital." Yang Ming picked up Shuya and said, "Hurry up." Even though Yang Ming had confirmed from Savon Geese that Shuya did not have any physical problems, he still had some anxiety in his heart. After all, the person who took the drug was Shuya. Even if there were a little side effect, it was enough for Yang Ming to feel distressed. "I have called the best doctor in the city. They will be here soon," Lochlering said quickly. He had already called and invited the doctor over. This was also a show of loyalty to old Buffon. "Thank you very much." Although the matter happened at Lochlering's place, in fact, Yang Ming also understood that this matter could not be blamed on Lochlering, so Yang Ming did not say anything to Lochlering. Since Lochlering also invited the doctor, then Yang Ming should thank him. "You don't have to thank me. This is what I should do." Lochlering knew that Yang Ming's identity was honorable. How could he dare to accept Yang Ming's gratitude? He quickly waved his hand and said. Sure enough, it didn't take long for the doctor to come. Several doctors also knew the identity of Lochlering, but when they saw Lochlering being busy, they could guess that the identity of this patient was definitely not simple. They quickly took out a simple stretcher and then began a comprehensive examination of Shuya. From the analysis of the components extracted from the residue at the mouth, Shuya had indeed taken a common sleeping pill component, which had no major impact on the human body. After confirming that there was really no danger, Yang Ming was relieved. "Doctor, what should I do now?" Yang Ming asked quickly. According to the patient's current reaction, the amount of medicine taken is not large, so I personally do not recommend any medical means. The patient can wake up naturally after a few hours. What we can do is to give the patient gastric lavage. Although this can make the patient wake up as soon as possible, it will bring a lot of pain to the patient, so I don't recommend it. The doctor said carefully to Yang Ming. Although he was an emergency doctor in the city's most famous hospital, he also knew that these upper-class people were not easy to serve, especially those who even LoveLore had to bow down to. They did not dare to neglect, so the doctor waited again and expressed his opinion. Okay, then I will listen to you. Yang Ming nodded. Indeed, if Shuya's stomach was forcibly pumped, it would only increase Shuya's pain. This was what Yang Ming did not want to see. Wait a minute. I will prescribe some medicine for the patient. You can take it after the patient wakes up. In fact, it is some excretory medicine. It helps to expel the residual medicine in the stomach from the body, said the doctor. Then I will trouble you. Yang Ming thanked him. Shuya had no problem, so Yang Ming was relieved. LoveLore's cocktail party had to end early. LoveLore himself was also called to Old Buffon's car and returned to Buffon Villa with Old Buffon to discuss important things. Yang Ming was holding Shuya and sitting on Old Buffon's extended Bentley. Wang Xiaoyan sat next to Yang Ming. Looking at Yang Ming's worried look, she advised, "Didn't the doctor say that? She will be fine." "And I know." Yang Ming sighed and said, "It seems that I really have to assign a bodyguard to Shuya in the future. I will go and study with Li Chang and train a group of female assassins. Then I will let them protect your safety." Yang Ming naturally referred to all his women, including Qin Mengyan, Lin Jiyun, and the others. Although Wang Xiaoyan did not need protection, she was still very happy when Yang Ming said so. She smiled and said, "I don't need it. It is not certain who will protect who. People who can hurt you need me to protect you personally." Yang Ming also smiled and said, "Who asked us to have special professions?" Hee hee. Wang Xiaoyan heard that Yang Ming wanted to protect her personally. She suddenly smiled happily. "It seems that my treatment is better than others." Chapter 1133. A bloody storm blew silently in this city in Europe. In Chief Norton's office, Norton had just returned from arresting Savon Geese and Malajben. Before he sat down for a minute, the phone call came in. However, Norton did not feel that there was anything strange, but he felt that it was quite normal. Hello. Chief Norton picked up the phone. "Norton. You have to give me an explanation. What the hell is going on?" On the other side of the phone, there was the roar of Mayor Mark Vader. "Explain what?" "Mayor Mark Vader." Norton made his voice sound plain and innocent. "Why did you arrest my son? What crime did he commit? He should be a victim. It is said that he was beaten very badly. You actually sent him to prison. Do you not want to be the police chief anymore?" Mayor Mark Vader roared. "Dear Mayor Mark Vader, first of all, I want to say that your young master, Malajben, is suspected of deliberately hurting and raping a girl. We arrested him according to law. There is nothing wrong with this. I think I have been enforcing the law impartially." Chief Norton explained. "Bullshit." Mark Vader couldn't help but curse. "My son was beaten. You say that he is a criminal. Are you kidding me? I think you really have to step down as the chief. I now order you to immediately release my son, Malajben, and the lieutenant governor's son, Savon Geese, and then bring the murderer who hurt them to justice. Otherwise, you can think about the consequences yourself." "I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I can't do that." Chief Norton shook his head and said, "Things are already very clear. It is indeed your son who intended to do something bad to the big star, Miss Shuya. He put a drug in Miss Shuya's red wine. After Miss Shuya fainted, he pulled her into the underground parking lot to rape her. At this time, It happened to be seen by the brave citizens who implemented assistance to stop Malajben's atrocity. Okay. Norton, you are very good. You are very good. Mark Vader was so angry. He didn't expect Norton to not even listen to his words. In his opinion, this was not a difficult thing at all. As long as Norton was willing to help, he could hire a better lawyer to get his son off the hook. But the problem now was that his son was injured like this, and Norton still forcibly arrested him, which made Mark Vader very annoyed. After thinking about it, if he wanted to release his son at the moment, he had to go through Director Norton, so Mark Vader suppressed his anger and said to Norton, "Well, Director Norton, since this is the case, then let my son, Malajben, and Sevan Geese be released on medical parole." "I'm afraid that won't do." Chief Norton denied. "The criminal facts of Malajben and Sevan Geese are very bad, and Shuya is a foreign star. This has involved an international dispute. I can't give them medical parole. But you can rest assured, Mayor Mark Vader, our police station will invite the best doctors to treat Malajben and Sevan Geese." When Mark Vader heard Norton's words, he was so angry that his nose was almost crooked. What international dispute? Isn't it just a celebrity? Even if she is Miss Alice's guest, my son didn't do anything to her, did he? In Mark Vader's view, this was just a misunderstanding. As long as he explained, it would be over. He didn't expect Norton to be so serious. Director Norton, I have already said what I want to say. How to do it is up to you. Mark Vader snorted and said, "If I don't see Malajben and Sevan Geese being released on medical parole within an hour, then you can forget about being the director. My lawyer is already on the way to the police station." After saying that, Mark Vader slammed the phone down. Although Director Norton knew that the matter involved the Buffon family, Patriarch Buffon still did not give him a clear attitude. Although Patriarch Old Buffon's words meant that he would not be mistreated, no one knew the specifics. Thinking of this, Director Norton felt that it was necessary to communicate with Patriarch Old Buffon again. He naturally did not have Old Buffon's phone number, but he had Lochlering's phone number. "Lochlering, this is Norton." Director Norton said politely after connecting the phone. "Old friend, hello." Lochlering's tone made Norton somewhat flattered. His relationship with Lochlering was not very good. It could only be said to be ordinary. At this moment, Lochlering spoke to him in this tone. Is he hinting at something? Thinking of this, Director Norton quickly said, "Mr. Lochlering, aren't you very familiar with Patriarch Buffon? Can you help me contact him? I have something to report to the Buffon clan leader." Director Norton thought for a long time and decided to use the word report. Although Old Buffon was not his chief executive, the power of Patriarch Old Buffon was stronger than any of his superiors. Even to put it bluntly, in front of the president, Patriarch Old Buffon was on an equal footing, or even a little higher. Norton, why are you so polite to me? I am at Patriarch Buffon's house. So, I will ask Patriarch Buffon. You wait a moment. Lochlering said with a smile. After Norton listened to Lochlering's words, he was relieved. For people at the level of Patriarch Buffon, they could see whoever they wanted to see. It was not possible to see them without asking for permission. Since Lochlering said so, it meant that there was hope in this matter. Otherwise, Lochlering could have just ignored him directly. But what surprised Norton was what was the relationship between Lochlering and Patriarch Old Buffon. It seemed that the two people seemed to be very familiar with each other, and he was still a guest at Patriarch Old Buffon's house. I have never heard that Lochlering had such a strong backer. Croft asked a police officer, who hurt Malajben and Sevan Geese. We don't know. Wake said in her heart. Even if I know, I won't tell you. How can you be the police chief? You don't have any ability. Didn't you just flatter Mark Vader? How can you be as capable as Norton? Weren't you all present at the time? How can you not know? Croft frowned and asked angrily. It's true that we were present, but Norton didn't let us go forward. We just arrested the two suspects, Malajben and Sevon Geese. We didn't do anything else. Wake explained. Norton is not the police chief. He is just an idle person now. I am the police chief. Croft was a little annoyed when he heard Wake calling Norton the police chief. Also, Malajben and Sevon Geese are not suspects. They are the victims. Oh. Wake nodded perfunctorily. You are the police chief. You can say whatever you want. Anyway, it's up to me whether I listen to you or not. Croft also knew that he couldn't ask anything from Wake. He could only wait for Malajben and Sevon Geese to wake up and make a decision. Wait, yes, there is another person who should know what happened. Isn't that person the big star, Shuya? She should know the truth of the matter, right? Thinking of this, Croft said to his men, you go and summon Shuya. Let her come to the police station to cooperate with the investigation. Director Croft, Miss Shuya is a foreign guest from Hong Kong. We have no right to summon her. According to the local law, to summon a foreigner, it must be approved by the local embassy, so this man said with some difficulty. Idiot. You go and catch her directly. Do you still need me to teach you? Croft was now only thinking about how to please Mark Vader. As for whether it was illegal for him to do so, he didn't know. Who cares? In his opinion, as long as he pleases Mark Vader, he could do anything. Norton, this idiot, was enforcing the law impartially. As a result, he offended Mayor Mark Vader and was dismissed. Yes. This man was Croft's man, so when he heard Croft say this, he nodded and agreed. He gathered a few people and began to contact Shuya's agent. When Shuya came, these contact information were on file in the police station, so it was easy to contact Shuya's agent. Are you Miss Shuya's agent, Su Li? I am Huarers, a police officer in the police station. There is an important criminal case that we want to find her to understand. Please come to the police station to assist in the investigation, said Huarers. Shuya was drugged and has not woken up yet. The matter is very simple. There is no need to understand it. Su Li said, Malajben and Sevon Geese drugged Miss Shuya with the intention of raping her. Is there any doubt about this? No, according to our understanding of the situation, Miss Shuya was playing with Malajben and Sevon Geese. As a result, the thugs came and attacked Malajben and Sevon Geese without any explanation, so we need Miss Shuya to help us bring the thugs to justice, said Huarers. Thugs? Attack? Su Li was stunned. She still didn't know that the chief of the police station had been replaced. She was somewhat inexplicable. Did you make a mistake? Malajben and Sevon Geese are criminals. Miss Shuya can't play with them. We will naturally investigate whether there is a mistake. Now, you ask Miss Shuya to come to the police station immediately. Huarers ordered. You wait a minute. Regarding what Huarers said, Su Li didn't know what was going on, so she quickly put down the phone and asked Yang Ming to see what Yang Ming said. Yang Ming was guarding Shuya's bed at the moment, holding her hand. Although he knew that Shuya was fine, Yang Ming was still very distressed to accompany her. He wanted to see her wake up. How about I go and kill those two bastards? Seeing Yang Ming's sad look, Wang Xiaoyan was also very upset. She said bitterly, I will dig out their eyeballs and step on them. I will cut off their chicks and step on them. After listening to Wang Xiaoyan's words, Yang Ming couldn't help but smile. This kind of words could only be said by a ruthless person like Wang Xiaoyan. He shook his head and said, Old Buffon has arranged it properly. These two people will not live through tonight. It turns out that it has been arranged. I was still thinking about how to kill them, and you didn't tell me. Wang Xiaoyan said with some complaints. Chapter 1134. Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan were chatting. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Yang Ming said, "Please come in." Yang Ming, a police officer named Halser in the police station, called and asked Miss Shuya to assist in the investigation. Listening to him, it seems that Malajben and Sevon Geese are the victims. Su Li came in and repeated the contents of the phone call to Yang Ming. It's normal. The police chief has been replaced. Norton has been removed from his position. Now, it has been replaced by Mark Vader's confidant. It is normal for them to do this. Yang Ming was familiar with old Buffon's plan, so when he heard Su Li say that the police station called and said so, he didn't feel anything strange. "What should we do now?" asked Su Li. "Tell them Shuya's current address and let them send someone to arrest her if they have the ability." Yang Ming snorted and said disdainfully, "Okay." Su Li also faintly guessed the power represented by old Buffon because on the way here, the security outside and the manor's land were enough to explain old Buffon's extraordinary identity. Therefore, since Yang Ming said so, he must be sure that the police did not dare to break in and arrest her, so she returned to the room and picked up the phone. "Police Officer Halser, are you still there?" "I'm here." "What did Miss Shuya say?" asked Halser. "Miss Shuya is still very weak. If you really need her, send someone over personally. Our address is..." Su Li said the address here according to Yang Ming's instructions. Halser didn't expect Shuya to be so straightforward. She even told them the address. Halser quickly took people to this address. "Boss, why are there so few people here? Did we come to the wrong place?" One of Halser's men who was driving asked, baffled. "We are almost in the suburbs." "Yes, this is what is written on the address. It's not far ahead, and the satellite navigation device will never be wrong," said Halser. "Oh, okay." Seeing that Halser had made up his mind, the driver didn't ask any more questions and continued to drive. When the car passed through many small paths and entered what seemed to be a manor, Halser also felt that something was wrong. "What is this place? Why haven't I been here before?" "Boss, I've been feeling strange for a long time. This doesn't seem to be within the boundaries of our city," the driver said. "Motherfucker, are you lying to me?" Halser cursed. "Let me call again and ask." "Stop the car." A group of fully armed men suddenly appeared and blocked Halser's path. Halser and the others were startled. The driver had no choice but to stop in front of the roadblock. Immediately, someone pointed a gun at his head. "Don't move. Get out of the car." Halser was shocked. He was a police officer and someone dared to point a gun at him. This was a provocation. He immediately shouted, "We are the police. Put down your guns. I don't care who you are." The leader of the group of fully armed men said, "This is already private territory. You have trespassed into private territory. Now, you have to go back with me for investigation. We are the police. You have no right to arrest us." Seeing that this group of people was going to get in the car to arrest them, Halser suddenly became anxious and shouted, "We are the XXX Army unit. The President has ordered us to protect the safety of the Buffon family. We have the right to investigate anyone who trespasses here," said the fully armed leader. "Ah!" Halser was suddenly dumbfounded. Although he was a low-level police officer, he had heard of the Buffon family. This was a family that was high and mighty like a god. These low-level people couldn't get in touch with them at all. He didn't expect that he would break into the Buffon family's territory. Moreover, they were soldiers authorized by the president. Wasn't it very easy to arrest him for investigation? Take them away. The armed leader didn't talk nonsense with Halsey. He waved his hand directly and ordered his men to arrest Halsey and the others. Halsey cursed in his heart. Did Su Li, that woman, lie to me? How did I break into the Buffon family's territory? This is great. I didn't see Shuya, but I was caught by the army garrison. Halsey felt very wronged. He wanted to call Mark Vader and tell him, but his communication equipment was confiscated by others. He could only obediently follow them to be interrogated. In the hospital, Mark Vader saw his son, Malajben, who was beaten until he almost didn't recognize him. He saw that Malajben's handsome face was completely disfigured. All his teeth were knocked out, and his eye sockets and nose were all fractured. From the current state of the patient, there is no problem in recovering, but there may be some ugly scars on his face. The doctor said to Mark Vader, moreover, many bones on the face are broken. It is also very troublesome to get plastic surgery. Mark Vader hated the murderer who hurt Malajben. He couldn't wait to tear him into pieces. But at this moment, he was more concerned about whether Malajben could recover. No matter how much money it costs, you must let my son return to normal. Let's try our best. The doctor nodded. What Mark Vader didn't know was that the best hospital in the city was actually one of the hospitals under the medical group controlled by the Buffon family. However, even if he knew, he wouldn't think much about it. After all, he still didn't know that the person he provoked was related to old Buffon. On the night of the medical parole, an accident happened. Malajben and Savon Geese both died in the hospital because of medical malpractice. After learning the news, Mark Vader rushed to the hospital overnight. He was really a little exhausted. How could they be fine during the day, but they died at night? Moreover, this kind of injury was just some external injuries. The internal organs were not hurt at all, so there was no need for surgery. How could they die? When Mark Vader rushed to the hospital, he found that there were a lot of media reporters in the hospital that should have been very quiet. This made Mark Vader very puzzled, because this kind of thing, the hospital would generally deal with it in a low-key manner. How could it attract so many reporters? As a matter of fact, the bigger the matter, the worse it was for the hospital. At that time, everyone would know that there was a medical malpractice in this hospital. Then, who would dare to come here to see a doctor? But although it was strange, Mark Vader's brain had no time to think about this. What was left of him now was only anger. His son was killed by a doctor, and this matter could not be easily forgotten. Mark Vader got out of his private car and just took 2 steps, but he was surrounded by reporters. Although Mark Vader was very impatient, in front of the reporters, he had to maintain his good public image. He reluctantly stood up and dealt with it. It's so late. What's the matter? Mayor Mark Vader, I am a reporter from XX Weekly. I heard that your son died due to a medical malpractice when he was being treated in this hospital. Is this true? This was a question raised by a reporter from a very authoritative weekly. Yes, so I rushed here overnight, but what I want to say is that whether the person who died due to a medical malpractice is my son or not, I will let the medical management department intervene in the investigation and give justice to the deceased, said Mayor Mark Vader. Mayor Mark Vader, I am a reporter from XX Evening News. I heard that the lieutenant governor's son also died in this medical malpractice like your son. Is there any connection between them? The question was asked by a reporter from a local media, which made Mark Vader a little annoyed. In my territory, why are you joining in the fun? They were attacked and hospitalized together by the thugs. I don't know if there is any connection because I have just arrived here like you. I don't know the other situations yet, said Mark Vader. Is that so? Mayor Mark Vader, I heard that your young master and Savon geese were not attacked by the thugs, but they were injured by the Good Samaritans because they intended to molest the international celebrity, Shuya. This time, it was still a local newspaper reporter who spoke, but this newspaper belonged to the media group where LoveLore was. Although the reporter's question was sharper than the previous people, Mark Vader had no way to deal with it. After all, Senator LoveLore was not on good terms with him on the surface. They had been scheming against each other for a long time. How could his people let him go so easily in this case? There is no such thing. Mark Vader flatly denied, this is a rumor. These are some people with ulterior motives. They want to create some trouble for me, so they spread such rumors. Is it? I don't think so. The reporter continued, we learned that Chief Norton was dismissed by you because of his impartiality in enforcing the law. Instead, the newly appointed Chief Croft turned your son and Savon geese, the two suspects, into victims and sent them to the hospital. This is slander, blatant slander. Mark Vader was suddenly anxious. He didn't understand why these reporters did not pursue this medical accident in the hospital, but pointed the spearhead at him. Under the instigation of the reporter, several liberal online media reporters also began to show their sharpness. According to the internal staff of the police station released them because of the intervention of Mayor Mark Vader. Is that so? That is to say, this incident is entirely because of you. If you didn't insist on letting your son and Savon geese go, they would not be hospitalized. Then, there would not be this medical accident, right? Your son is equivalent to dying under your doting. Is this right? This is a punishment from God. A person who has done too many bad things will be punished eventually. Mark Vader was going crazy. He didn't understand how these inside stories were spread, and how these reporters knew about it, but one thing he understood was that once these news were published in the newspapers and the internet tomorrow, he, the mayor, would soon step down. Beads of sweat fell, and Mark Vader had to wave his hand. I am anxious to see my son's situation now. If there is anything, we will talk about it later. Then, you admit the previous facts, right? The reporter said unrelentingly. Mark Vader ignored these reporters and walked quickly to the hospital. So, the reporters recorded it in their notebooks. Mayor Mark Vader expressed his acquiescence to the above facts. Seeing his son lying in the cold morgue, Mark Vader only felt that he was going crazy. Am I really wrong? Is all this caused by me? At the same time, the lieutenant governor was also on his way to the hospital. Unfortunately, like Mark Vader before, he was surrounded by a group of reporters at the entrance of the hospital, and he was asked similar questions. However, the question asked became, "Excuse me, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Did you instruct Mayor Mark Vader to do this?" This made the lieutenant governor very annoyed. Lieutenant Governor, what should I do now? Seeing the lieutenant governor in the morgue, Mark Vader quickly asked as if he saw a life-saving straw. Humph. The lieutenant governor was also very annoyed with Mark Vader. His son inexplicably died in the hospital. If Malajben didn't die with him, he would really tear Mark Vader apart. What can I do? The first task now is to clarify public opinion, and then investigate the cause of this medical accident. But those reporters. Mark Vader was very worried about this. After all, these bad things were done by him. He was the one who specifically operated it. The lieutenant governor just hinted at his affairs. I will look for my connections again. Although the lieutenant governor was also immersed in the pain of losing his son, there were some things that had to be dealt with. Moreover, he was stronger than Mark Vader. At least he had 3 sons, and Mark Vader only had 1 son. Unfortunately, the next day, the headlines of many newspapers and the headlines of online portals showed news reports of Mark Vader interfering with justice and causing his son's death. Mark Vader read these newspapers and web pages in the office, and he almost had a heart attack and was hospitalized. At this time, the phone rang at an inappropriate time. "Croft, what's the matter?" Mark Vader picked up the phone impatiently. "Bro, this time something happened. You have to save me. I have only been the bureau chief for a day. I don't want to step down immediately. I still have many children at home waiting for me to support. I can't not have a job. Even if you help me deal with it, I can be an ordinary police officer." Croft didn't have much ability. He was nothing except for flattery. When he saw the report in the newspaper, he knew that he was done for this time, so he quickly called his backer, Mark Vader. He didn't think about it. At this time, his backer, Mark Vader, was already unable to protect himself. How could Mark Vader have the time to care about him? Sure enough, Mark Vader said perfunctorily, "Okay, I got it." "It's okay." "That's good. That's good." For Mark Vader, Croft could only trust him blindly. Originally, Mark Vader still had a glimmer of hope, but now, the pressure from the outside world was getting bigger and bigger. Many citizens called the city government to ask Mark Vader about the authenticity of the matter. Many voters who voted for Mark Vader also shouted that they were fooled. They spontaneously formed a forum to crusade against Mark Vader on the internet to crusade against Mark Vader's series of practices. Under the pressure, Mark Vader had to submit his resignation. It was impossible for him to continue to be the mayor. The council passed Mark Vader's resignation and voted to let LoveLore be the acting mayor for this term. Croft also stepped down. His dream of becoming a police officer could not be realized. He was taken away with Mark Vader for investigation. Norton, on the other hand, was once again the chief of police. All of this took less than a day for the dust to settle. Although Yang Ming didn't know much about politics, it was not difficult to see through a series of changes. All of them were instructed by Old Buffon. Even Old Buffon only hinted that everything would be handled by his subordinates. At the same time, the lieutenant governor also stepped down, but who replaced him was not Yang Ming's concern. But, without thinking, it must be Old Buffon's people. Mark Vader's family was also ruined. Not only did he lose the mayor's position, but his son also passed away. However, he had no choice. When he later heard people hinting that he had offended the Buffon family, Mark Vader could only accept his fate. At this time, Shuya had already woken up. She was lying in bed watching the news on TV. Yang Ming was by her side at the moment. Wang Xiaoyan had already left tactfully. "Those who want to harm you have gotten the retribution they deserve." Yang Ming pointed to the TV screen and said, Malajben and Sevon Geese both died from medical accidents." Suya widened her eyes and looked at the report on the news incredulously. "Both of them are dead. If they aren't dead, would they still be alive?" Yang Ming said very calmly, "I will not let go of the people who hurt you. You also have power here." Suya was not stupid. Since Malajben and Sevon Geese died from medical accidents instead of being assassinated, it proved that Yang Ming was also very powerful in the local area. Otherwise, it was impossible to operate such a result. Moreover, it could be seen from the resignation of both of their fathers that Yang Ming's power was not small. "I have some power. In the future, if you want to hold a concert elsewhere, tell me first. I will help you arrange it. Then, you won't be bullied by others. You will also be asked to accompany others to drink. You will be bullied." Yang Ming held Shuya's small hand and said, "If this time, I am not there, and something happens to you, what should I do?" Suya was also scared for a while. It was also her first time holding an international concert. In the past, she had always been in her father's sphere of influence, and there had never been any accidents. This time, Suya also understood that being a celebrity was actually very difficult. Chapter 1135. I know. Suya nodded with grievance. I will tell you in the future. If it's too hard, don't be a celebrity. Just sing and perform for us at home. There are many audiences anyway. Yang Ming smiled. The girl before, who is she? Why haven't I seen her before? Suya blushed when she heard Yang Ming say this. She thought of Yang Ming's women and asked with slight annoyance. She is a partner in my career. Yang Ming didn't hide the identity of Wang Xiaoyan from Suya. He didn't know why, but in front of Suya, Yang Ming didn't want to hide anything. Is it really just a partner? Suya obviously didn't believe it, and Suya sensed something from Wang Xiaoyan's eyes when she looked at Yang Ming. Ugh! Yang Ming was suddenly embarrassed. He didn't expect Suya to be so observant. Wang Xiaoyan left the room after she woke up. Suya noticed something at that moment. What are you nervous about? Suya saw Yang Ming's embarrassment and smiled slightly. She is the same kind of person as you, right? Are you here to perform the mission together? Yang Ming's eyes suddenly showed a surprised look. Although Yang Ming said that Wang Xiaoyan was his partner, he didn't say what kind of partner it was, but Yang Ming guessed it at once. This made Yang Ming very impressed and surprised. Don't be so surprised. In fact, I was just guessing. Suya saw Yang Ming's surprised look and smiled. If you come to talk about business, you must bring Zhang Bin or Qin Mengyan. You brought her, which explains some problems. You are not here to talk about business. Then, we met for the first time. She should also be your help in that aspect, right? Who are you here to kill this time? Is it Malajben and the others? No, I went to Africa to deal with some affairs. Yang Ming said, North Africa's country X, a small country. You may not have heard of it. It is so dangerous. Suya sighed. However, it is good to have a girl by your side who can take care of you. After all, we can't intervene in your affairs. It's good that you can understand. Yang Ming didn't expect Suya to be so open-minded. She didn't mind Wang Xiaoyan's matter at all. In fact, it was impossible to say that Suya didn't mind at all. After all, a girl's mind was always jealous and narrow-minded. However, she was not by Yang Ming's side for many years. She couldn't take care of Yang Ming at all, especially when Yang Ming often ran around the world. If there was a girl like him to take care of him, it could also reduce Suya's worry. Why can't I understand? Suya smiled and said, I'm not that kind of jealous woman. Take me to see her. Now. Are you feeling better? Yang Ming looked at Suya with some worry. I'm not sick. I just took some sleeping medicine. Not only am I not uncomfortable, but I have a good sleep. It's comfortable. Shu Yi stretched a little and said, in the past few days, I haven't recovered from the jet lag, so I haven't been able to sleep well. Now, it's good. I can sleep peacefully. Is it because Malajben did a good thing with bad intentions? Yang Ming smiled and said, if I knew this, then I would have let them go. Oh, people are dead. You still say that. Good or bad? Suya didn't have much feeling about these killings. After all, the gangs in Hong Kong were even more so. Sometimes it was easy to kill a person. Suya's father had a gang, so Suya could usually get in touch with some inside information. Then, should I call Yen Yen for you? Yang Ming hesitated and asked. Suya nodded. You go. Yang Ming got up and went out of Suya's room. He didn't know why Suya was so anxious to find Wang Xiaoyan, but he still did as she said. How is it? Wang Xiaoyan saw Yang Ming coming out of the room and quickly asked with concern. Nothing, but little Yit said she wants to see you. Yang Ming felt that he was a little awkward when he spoke. See me? What do you want to see me for? Wang Xiaoyan was stunned and asked suspiciously. I don't know. You go. She knows our relationship. You don't have to deny anything. Right, don't quarrel. Yang Ming said. What are you quarreling about? What kind of person do you think I am? Wang Xiaoyan rolled her eyes at Yang Ming and walked into the room. As for what the two people said and did, Yang Ming could see it with his special ability, but he didn't do so. Sometimes, it was better to give them some free space. If he knew everything, then he would lose the original joy of life. Walking in the direction of the living room, old Buffon and his wife were watching TV at the moment. Yang Ming glanced at the TV screen. It was actually the original Chinese version of The Legend of the Condor Heroes. It was the classic version of the 1983 version. Yang Ming didn't know if this TV series was released in English, but old Buffon was familiar with Chinese. It was not strange that he could understand the Chinese version. Old Buffon was very excited, but Mrs. Buffon had no interest in the fighting and killing. Her Chinese was not very good. Now, she was just watching with old Buffon. Master, is Master's wife Shu okay? Old Buffon had learned about the relationship between Yang Ming and Shuya from Wang Xiaoyan. He also understood why Yang Ming was so angry. Therefore, old Buffon simply went all the way. After sending people to kill Malajben and Sevan Geese, he also destroyed their father. However, old Buffon really admired Yang Ming. The big star, Shuya, was actually one of Master's lovers. No wonder Master was so enthusiastic about this star. He had already called Wang Xiaoyan as Master's wife. Old Buffon was a bit embarrassed about how to address Shuya. If he called her Master's wife, it was easy to get mixed up. He didn't know who he was calling. If he didn't call her Master's wife, it would be disrespectful. So, after a long time of thinking, he came up with the idea of adding the surname in front, so it became Master's wife Wang and Master's wife Shu. This was also difficult for old Buffon. Even if it was a Chinese native, it was not easy to think of this name, let alone old Buffon. Nothing much. I slept. Now I am in good spirits. I am talking to Yan Yan. Yang Ming smiled and sat on the sofa. He pointed to the Legend of the Condor Heroes on TV and said, Do you also like to watch martial arts dramas? Old Buffon sighed in his heart. Master is so badass. He can actually let the two masters' wives get along well, but I can't do it. Although old Buffon had a lover when he was young, he looked for it behind his wife's back. How could he dare to disclose it? Yeah, if only I could be like the heroes in this show. Old Buffon yearned for the skills of the people in the TV series. There are some exaggerated elements in the TV. Although Chinese martial arts are extensive and profound, it is definitely not to the point of leaping onto roofs and vaulting over walls and internal strength. Yang Ming smiled and said, So, you don't have to be too persistent. But, it still has the effect of strengthening the body and quickly subduing the enemy. Of course, I know that there are exaggerated elements in the TV series, but it is not all of them. At least, Master, you are a master. You are proficient in the technique of pressing acupoints, and your external kung fu is good. Although I don't know if you can float on water, leaping onto roofs and vaulting over walls is definitely possible. Old Buffon said very seriously. You don't have to flatter me. Even if you don't say it, I will teach you martial arts with all my heart. It's just that at your age, those leaping onto roofs and vaulting over walls are really not suitable to learn. Don't mention the external kung fu of thrusting training. It can only be applied internally and externally to change your physique. Right, the Chinese medicine that I gave you before, did you take it on time? Asked Yang Ming. I take it on time every day. Old Buffon nodded quickly and said, the effect of this medicine is very significant. I obviously feel that my body is much stronger than before. And I also noticed it, so this time I have to give you an appropriate change to the prescription. Yang Ming said to Old Buffon, you go and find a pen and paper. I will write a new prescription for you. Okay. Old Buffon quickly stood up and went to find a pen and paper. In fact, these things could be ordered to be done by the servant, but Old Buffon still went to get it personally. According to Old Buffon's current situation, Yang Ming modified a new prescription for him. Old Buffon took it excitedly. As a matter of fact, this prescription was quite important. If he didn't meet Yang Ming by chance, he wouldn't be able to get it no matter how much money he had. At this time, when she heard Old Buffon asking her to acknowledge him as her master, she was slightly stunned, but she immediately understood Old Buffon's meaning. However, she was a little hesitant in her heart. It wasn't because she had to kneel to Yang Ming, but because she was afraid that Yang Ming would reject her. What are you thinking about? Hurry up. Old Buffon urged impatiently. When he saw that Yang Ming didn't refuse, it should be an acquiescence. He was afraid that Yang Ming would regret it in a while, so he urged his wife with some resentment. Okay. Mrs. Buffon quickly knelt in front of Yang Ming. Master, please accept your apprentice's worship. These words were said on TV with Old Buffon all the time, so she was familiar with it. After 3 respectful kowtows, Yang Ming nodded slightly and said, okay, you can get up. Mrs. Buffon suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. She was just afraid that Yang Ming would refuse. Now that Yang Ming said so, it was obvious that he had agreed to accept her as his apprentice. Congratulations, junior sister. Old Buffon was also very happy. He was particularly excited that Yang Ming could give him such a big face. What junior sister? Mrs. Buffon didn't react for a while and asked in a daze. I entered the door first, so I'm the senior brother. You're the junior sister. Old Buffon explained, why are you so stupid? It turned out to be like this. Mrs. Buffon laughed after listening. Yang Ming gave her a Chinese medicine prescription according to Mrs. Buffon's situation, and then gave her a simple training plan. He let her practice for a few months to see how the progress was before making the next plan. Mrs. Buffon quickly thanked him. Old Buffon was also grateful to Yang Ming. He felt that he owed Yang Ming too much and couldn't repay him. As the saying goes, a master is like a father. If he teaches you kung fu, you can't repay him no matter how much you repay him. Old Buffon thought so at the moment. In fact, for Yang Ming, many of these were just a small effort. What Old Buffon did had already compensated Yang Ming with equivalent value. But Old Buffon didn't think so. He thought that what he did was just a small effort, and Yang Ming taught him kung fu. This was the most valuable thing. There were footsteps on the stairs. Yang Ming looked up but found Shuya and Wang Xiaoyan walking down the stairs side by side. In front of Old Buffon, Yang Ming still called Suya as Shuya, but it was a bit messy. Yang Ming simply called her Little Ya. Little Ya, Yan Yan, why did you come out? Yang Ming was a little surprised. Why didn't Shuya lie down a little longer? It was a little uncomfortable to lie down, so I wanted to get up and walk. Shuya smiled. I haven't seen the night scene of Europe yet. Yan Yan suggested that we go out together. That's fine too. Yang Ming felt that it was also necessary for Shuya to go outside and breathe some fresh air and relax. Now that Malajben's matter was solved, he was not afraid that someone would harass them again. I'm going to prepare the car. Yang Ming wanted to go out, so old Buffon was naturally the role of being at his beck and call, even though he was a role that had hundreds of responses in front of others. Yang Ming nodded and did not refuse. If he was always polite to old Buffon, it would bring psychological pressure to him. He would think that Yang Ming didn't really treat him as an apprentice, so Yang Ming simply let it be. Only when old Buffon fulfilled the obligation of being an apprentice, his heart would be at peace. The luxurious Bentley limousine drove out of old Buffon's manor. The driver was old Buffon himself, and Mrs. Buffon was sitting next to him. Yang Ming, Wang Xiaoyan, and Shuya were sitting in the back of the car. Yang Ming, the person driving in front, is from the Buffon family. Just now in front of old Buffon, Shuya hesitated several times. Now there were only a few people in the car, so Shuya could ask Yang Ming. Yes, he is the patriarch of the Buffon family, old Buffon. Yang Ming nodded and said, the person I'm talking about is him. In the future, if you have any trouble in Europe, you can find him. You don't have to be polite. Ah. It's really him. Shuya was shocked when she heard Yang Ming's affirmation at the moment. She didn't expect that the patriarch of the Buffon family, who was high up, would actually be Yang Ming's follower, and he would personally act as Yang Ming's driver. There is nothing to be surprised about. Didn't you hear him call you master's wife Shu? Yang Ming smiled and said, he is my apprentice, and his wife has just become my apprentice. So, if you are polite to him in the future, he will think that I want to expel him from the sect. So, don't add any psychological burden to him. Hee hee. Shuya listened to Yang Ming's words and suddenly covered her mouth and laughed. Yang Ming was becoming more and more mysterious. Although she knew a lot of things about Yang Ming, she didn't understand these little things. If she knew that Yang Ming knew the patriarch, old Buffon, then she wouldn't have to attend the banquet yesterday. What else have you not told me? Shuya asked Yang Ming. These little things are too many. Otherwise, you don't want to be a celebrity and stay with me. Then, you will know everything. Yang Ming thought about it and instigated. I'm afraid this won't work. If I don't want to do it, there needs to be a process. Shuya sighed helplessly. Give me some time. Believe me. I will quit. And I understand. Yang Ming nodded. He also knew that a public figure like Shuya couldn't quit just because she wanted to. There had to be a gradual process. Chapter 1136. Although old Buffon was very famous, there were not many people who had seen him. Most of these people were celebrities at the top of the pyramid. Now, old Buffon was like an ordinary old man, walking on the street with his wife. They were like a middle-aged couple. There was nothing special about them. Yang Ming, on the other hand, was holding Wang Xiaoyan and Shuya as he walked in front of them. He looked like a playboy who came out to have fun, but it was not unusual. In fact, on the streets at night, most of the people like Yang Ming were playboys who came out to have fun. I haven't had this kind of ordinary feeling for a long time. Old Buffon said emotionally as he held his wife's hand. When they came out before, they were either with a team or with many guards. There was no sense of freedom at all. Yeah, it turns out that this kind of tranquility is so good. Mrs. Buffon had not been so relaxed for decades. After marrying old Buffon, she lived a life of not leaving the house. Hee hee, but it is only when I come out with master and master's wife that I have such a sense of security. With them, even a team of guards can't compare to it. Old Buffon was somewhat complacent. Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan didn't need much makeup, but Shuya was a public figure. At this moment, she had to wear a pair of large sunglasses to cover her face, but it couldn't hide her beauty. Walking on the street, she attracted a lot of young men's attention. Yang Ming. Look at that person. Suddenly, Wang Xiaoyan, who was next to Yang Ming, squeezed his hand and said softly. In fact, without Wang Xiaoyan's reminder, Yang Ming had already noticed that there was a man in a black trench coat not far from them. This person was actually the god of racing, Charles, whom they met in Songjiang. What's wrong? Xu Ye looked at Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan with a little doubt. She didn't know why they suddenly stopped. I saw an acquaintance. Yang Ming whispered, but I don't want him to see us here. Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan had always been very ordinary in front of Charles, but it was somewhat inexplicable for them to suddenly appear in Europe. Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan felt that Charles's behavior was sneaky, so they wanted to see what he was doing. They saw that Charles's cap was lowered, and the collar of his trench coat was raised, covering most of his face. If it weren't for Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan having a deep impression of this person, they wouldn't recognize him immediately. Charles lingered there as if he was waiting for someone. Yang. You. Little Ya, you go with old Buffon first. Yan Yan and I will go later. Okay. Old Buffon nodded and took his wife to leave first. He also understood that since Yang Ming said so, there must be something big. Xu Ye also knew that Yang Ming must have something important to do. Since he asked Wang Xiaoyan to stay, Xu Ye also guessed what it was. She nodded immediately. She was not an indecisive woman. She understood that staying here would only bring trouble to Yang Ming. If something happened and Yang Ming had to protect her, it would seriously affect the efficiency of Yang Ming's plan. Wang Xiaoyan was different. She didn't need Yang Ming's protection. The reason why Yang Ming handed Xu Ye over to old Buffon and his wife was because he was very relieved. In Europe, no one dared to touch the old Buffon family. After the three people left, Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan hid in the dark, quietly observing Charles's movements. After a closer look, Yang Ming found that Charles was not waiting for someone, but he was looking in the direction of a tea house in the distance, deep in thought. What is this guy looking at? When Yang Ming said this, he also looked in the direction of the tea house with his special ability. Who knows? Could it be that he wants to assassinate someone? Wang Xiaoyan guessed. There were not many people in the tea house. Looking at the situation, it seemed to be reserved. Many black-shirted people stood at the door and walked back and forth. Inside the tea house, only one person was sitting at a table. It was a somewhat dignified old man, quietly waiting for something. Next to him was a blonde girl. Although she could be said to be very beautiful, according to Yang Ming's Oriental aesthetic, he was not interested in this kind of European-style beauty. After a while, the old man looked at the watch on his wrist and frowned. It seemed that he was probably waiting for someone, and that person had not come yet. There is an old man and a young foreign girl in the tea house. They seem to be waiting for someone. Yang Ming said to Wang Xiaoyan. Could it be that they are waiting for Charles? Wang Xiaoyan said casually. Waiting for Charles. Yang Ming was stunned. He originally thought that Charles was observing the target, but now it seemed that this was not the case. How did you see it? Wang Xiaoyan was a little curious. She and Yang Ming stood together. She didn't even see the person in the tea house, but Yang Ming actually saw it so carefully. My eyesight is better. Yang Ming could only explain it this way. He still hid something from Wang Xiaoyan. Why do I feel that you are like Conan with electronic glasses? Wang Xiaoyan glanced at Yang Ming and said, I will take a closer look. Maybe it is someone I know. After that, she walked forward without waiting for Yang Ming to speak. Although Yang Ming wanted to stop her, he thought about it later. This road was not very wide, and there was no shelter on the side of the road. If they were too close, they would inevitably be discovered by Charles. But even if Charles discovered it, he didn't care. At most, they could sit down and talk together. Yang Ming would not be afraid of him. The old man in the tea house looked at the time again and frowned suddenly. Yang Ming guessed that it was probably because the appointed time had passed, so the old man had this expression. The old man took out his phone and dialed a number. What made Yang Ming a little surprised was that Charles actually took out his phone at the same time. He glanced at it, then pressed the button to hang up. The old man frowned and put down the phone. Then, he picked up the phone irritably and continued to dial the number just now. Charles fumbled for his phone again. Hello. Charles picked up the phone. Where are you? When are you coming? It is already half an hour later than the appointed time, asked the old man. I have something to do at the last minute, so I won't go. Charles's confidence was obviously lacking. You are nearby, right? I will ask someone to find you. The old man hung up the phone after he finished speaking. Then, he instructed a black-shirt man waiting beside him. The black-shirt man took the other black-shirt men out of the tea house and began to search in all directions near the tea house. After Charles hung up the phone and saw this scene, he suddenly turned around and ran toward Yang Ming. Wang Xiaoyan's attention was on the tea house over there. She didn't expect Charles, who was not far in front of her, to suddenly turn around and run toward her. Wang Xiaoyan was suddenly shocked. Wang Xiaoyan didn't know the conversation between the old man and Charles. When she saw Charles suddenly turn around, she thought that Charles found her trace. She didn't think about dodging but put on a posture of facing the enemy. Yang Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Yang Ming wanted to call Wang Xiaoyan, but it was too late because Charles had already seen the existence of Wang Xiaoyan. There was also a hint of surprise on Charles's face. What are you going to do? Charles asked in a panic. He didn't understand why Wang Xiaoyan suddenly appeared here and blocked in front of him. Is she someone hired by my father? What am I going to do? Wang Xiaoyan was suddenly stunned. Didn't you discover me? What did I discover about you? Charles heard Wang Xiaoyan's words and knew that there must be a misunderstanding between the two. He couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Don't talk about it. Hurry up and run. We'll talk later. With that, Charles took to his heels. Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan couldn't figure out the current situation, so they had to run with Charles. The three people were like a street marathon, running forward together. After running about 4 or 5 streets, Charles stopped. Fortunately, the three people were all assassins and had received strict physical training. So, after running so far, no one showed any signs of physical exhaustion or panting. They were all fine. Charles knew his own situation, so he was not surprised that he was fine. However, he had strong doubts about Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan. It was reasonable to say that except for athletes, any normal person who had run such a long distance without any preparation would feel more or less uncomfortable. At the very least, they would gasp for breath. After all, exercising for such a long time would increase their lung capacity. However, Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan did not have any adverse reactions. This made Charles very curious. Do you often exercise? And bed exercise? Yang Ming nodded and said seriously. Ah. Charles was stunned. Let's not talk about this. Why did you run just now? Yang Ming also saw Charles's suspicion, so he said, bed exercise, to divert Charles's attention. How can I not run? Didn't you see people coming out of the tea room to catch me? Charles said with lingering fear. Catch you? What do they want to catch you for? Asked Yang Ming. It's a long story. Charles was not familiar with Yang Ming, so he didn't say too much. Are you free? Sit down and have a few drinks together. I didn't expect to meet an acquaintance here. Let's go. We have nothing to do anyway. Yang Ming nodded and said. So, the three of them entered a small bar on the side of the road, found a small private room, and sat down. Charles, now you can't deny it, right? Do you have an industry in Europe? Asked Wang Xiaoyan with a half-smile. Charles didn't have a surprised expression. After all, when he talked to Yang Ming before, he had already admitted that he had an industry in Europe. It seems that you know me very well. Charles did not deny what Wang Xiaoyan said before. Who are you? I think we seem to know each other by accident. It's really just an accident. Yang Ming said, however, there is one thing that I don't think I need to hide. If there is no accident, we should be in the same industry. Same industry, what do you mean? Charles was stunned. You also race. You should understand what I mean. Yang Ming continued, I'm not a racer, but I'm an assassin. Yang Ming had learned from Wang Xiaoyan that Charles had no conflict with her. There was no deep hatred between the two, so Yang Ming didn't intend to beat around the bush with Charles. If he wanted to expand an unknown assassin group, in addition to his own strength, he had to work hard to get to know some helpers. Charles's family was the best helper. It was the third assassin group in the world, second only to the King of Assassins and the Butterfly family. To be honest, Yang Ming didn't want to have anything to do with the Butterfly family in his heart. Yang Ming was a more casual person. He didn't like the kind of life that others arranged for him. Although Fang Tian was his master, he didn't want to marry a so-called little princess of the Butterfly family according to his master's wishes. This kind of marriage without love was destined to fail and be a tragedy. Although the King of Assassins was ranked first in the world, its population was too thin. Except for Fang Tian, who was a general without an army, there were only two people left, Yang Ming and Dong Jun. Dong Jun was a master thief, not an assassin. Then, only Yang Ming could act. Although he had the title of the King of Assassins, the resources that he could borrow were limited. Yang Ming could rely on the power of the Butterfly family. He believed that the Butterfly family was willing to provide the necessary resources, but the marriage contract had become a thorn in Yang Ming's heart. He didn't want to trouble the Butterfly family. The more he owed them, the harder it would be to repay them. In the end, it would be fucked up if he had to repay the debt with his body. Therefore, Yang Ming had no choice but to find a third party for help. After Yang Ming knew Charles's identity, he locked his eyes on Charles. Originally, Yang Ming wanted to find a suitable opportunity to talk to Charles openly after returning to Songjiang. However, he didn't expect to meet Charles in Europe by accident. Although this was a bit rushed, since Charles had already seen Yang Ming's existence, Yang Ming also made up his mind and revealed his identity. What? Charles's face suddenly changed. He didn't expect that Yang Ming was actually an assassin. However, people in the assassin world rarely knew that he was the heir of the family. How did this Yang Ming know? Don't rush to deny it. The reason why I told you so much is that there is no conflict of interest or hostile relationship between us, so we can sit together and talk so much. Otherwise, you would have died long ago. Yang Ming smiled faintly. After listening to Yang Ming's words, Charles was obviously disdainful. Although he was committed to the traffic jam business, he had also undergone very strict assassin training since he was a child. Not everyone could kill him just because they wanted to. Really? Charles reached for the wine glass on the table disdainfully, but he suddenly found that the wine glass had disappeared. When he looked up, the wine glass was quietly placed in front of Yang Ming. Charles was suddenly shocked. When did Yang Ming take the wine glass? Charles didn't notice at all. If Yang Ming did something at this time, then he might be dead now. Thinking of this, Charles suddenly had a cold sweat. You, who asked you to come? No one asked us to come. Yang Ming shook his head. I didn't want to see you here. My idea was to find a chance to talk to you in detail after I returned to Songjiang, but I didn't expect to meet you here. What do you want? Charles looked at Yang Ming nervously. Nothing yet. I just want to contact you in this identity. Yang Ming said, I think we can talk about the specific plan in detail after we return to Songjiang. Do you mean that the two sides cooperate? Charles was not stupid. He immediately understood Yang Ming's meaning. Almost. Yang Ming nodded and said, Since you know my identity, then you probably understand my situation. Charles suddenly smiled bitterly. I am actually not interested in the career of those assassins. My favorite career is racing. This is my ideal and pursuit. As for the family, I feel bored just thinking about it. I have heard of this. Yang Ming said, but, are you going to keep going like this? As far as I know, you are the only heir of your family. If you go racing, what will happen to your family? Yang Ming's words seemed to hurt Charles's heartstrings. Charles bowed his head in pain. He kept grabbing his hair with his hand, and his face was very painful. I understand what you said, but if I do something I don't like just for the family, I will go crazy. Really? Yang Ming looked at Charles's current appearance, and he had some sympathy in his heart. The children of these big families were doomed at birth. In the eyes of outsiders, although they had infinite glory, they had their own difficulties. They also wanted to have their own life. Charles in front of him was like this, but thinking about it, wasn't Wang Xiaoyan next to him the same? She created the world's #1 assassin organization. Wasn't it a tool for her family to compromise with her? I know, but everyone has their own responsibilities. This is decided at birth. There is no way to avoid it. Yang Ming sighed and said, The person in the tea room just now is my father. He asked me to go back in the name of matchmaking, but I know that he wants to catch me and put me under house arrest. I won't be fooled, said Charles. Charles's words made Yang Ming slightly stunned. He didn't expect the old man in the tea room to be Charles's father. This family is really dramatic. The father calculates the son, and the son calculates the father. Chapter 1137. So, I can't help you with the cooperation. I don't want to have anything to do with the family's affairs. Charles shrugged and said, I understand. Yang Ming didn't want to force Charles. He stood up and patted his shoulder. Then you take care. I hope to see you in Songjiang. Of course, I will go back. I still want to pursue Miss Zhou. Charles said seriously. Damn, are you asking for a beating? Yang Ming listened to Charles's words and was dumbfounded. He punched the kid. What are you thinking about? Isn't your girlfriend Miss Wang? Charles didn't care. He looked at Yang Ming with a provocative look. What does Miss Zhou's matter have to do with you? Yang Ming knew that this kid was using Wang Xiaoyan to divide him. In his opinion, Wang Xiaoyan was his girlfriend, so at this moment, he would not refute Zhou Jiejia's matter. If he refuted, wouldn't he admit that he had a relationship with Zhou Jiejia? Charles's wishful thinking was very good, but what he didn't expect was that Wang Xiaoyan said indifferently after listening, I am Yang Ming's lover. Zhou Jiejia is his girlfriend. Ha! Charles was stunned. Did this chick eat the wrong medicine? She said it so straightforwardly. Charles was stunned for a long time, then he lowered his head helplessly. Well, I admit that you are badass, but I still have the right to pursue Miss Zhou. Do whatever you want. You're on your own. Yang Ming snorted. I hope you still have this opportunity. What do you mean? Charles was dissatisfied with Yang Ming's words. How do you know that I don't have a chance? Your dad is here. Yang Ming pointed outside the bar mysteriously. Damn, are you lying? Charles naturally didn't believe it and rolled his eyes. Don't deceive me with such a low IQ lie. I won't be afraid. Do as you please. Yang Ming shrugged and stood up. He then left the bar with Wang Xiaoyan. At the entrance of the bar, Wang Xiaoyan suddenly froze. She looked at Yang Ming in disbelief. How did you know that someone came to his house? I guessed. Yang Ming smiled and looked at the large number of black-clothed people coming from all directions. They were the people he saw at the entrance of the tea house. You guessed. Why do you think so? Wang Xiaoyan asked curiously. It's very simple. Do you think he can escape? His mobile phone was probably installed with a satellite positioning system by his father or something else on his body, said Yang Ming. That's right. That brat is unlucky. He doesn't even know it yet. Wang Xiaoyan smiled sweetly. Yang Ming took out his phone and called Old Buffon. Where are you? At Wharton Street, in a casino, said Old Buffon. How did you go to the casino? Yang Ming suddenly frowned. He subconsciously didn't want Shuya to come into contact with that kind of place. An old friend opened a casino. Since they invited me, I was embarrassed to not go. So, I came to look around. Where are you? Asked Old Buffon. When Yang Ming heard that it was opened by Old Buffon's friend, he was slightly relieved. He didn't want Shuya to come into contact with these things in society. I don't know where I am. Yang Ming looked around. Just now, he was running wildly with Charles. Who knew where this place was? In this case, you stop a taxi, and then come to Alice Casino. Old Buffon said, it's very famous. All taxi drivers know about it. Okay. Yang Ming hung up the phone after he finished speaking. Then, he said to Wang Xiaoyan, these people actually went to the casino. Let's go and see. Alice Casino. Wang Xiaoyan listened thoughtfully. I seem to have heard of it. Old Buffon also said that it's very famous. Let's go. Let's go. As Yang Ming said this, he stopped a taxi and went in the direction of Alice Casino with Wang Xiaoyan. I remember. Alice is a very famous person. In Europe's upper class, it is not much worse than the Buffon family's power. Wang Xiaoyan suddenly said, there is a famous cruise ship called Alice. Every year, celebrities from all over the world are invited to gather on the ship. Alice. Hearing this name, Yang Ming was shocked and remembered something. When I first met Suya, wasn't it on the Alice? Could it be that Alice? The mysterious woman who is rumored to have royal aristocratic blood and even has the support of a country's forces. Why? Have you heard of it? Asked Wang Xiaoyan. The first mission was on the Alice. Yang Ming whispered. Because the taxi here was not like the one in China, it was separated from the front and back. There was a partition in the middle, so if you whispered, the driver couldn't hear it at all. Mission. Alice. Could it be? Wang Xiaoyan was shocked and turned to look at Yang Ming. Dorsk. Did you kill him? Yang Ming nodded. It was a coincidence. At that time, this guy was trying to molest Shuya. As a result, Shuya saw the process of me killing him. At that time, I still wanted to kill him. I almost. Having said this, Yang Ming smiled with some self-deprecation. It was almost a tragedy. No way. Isn't she your first love? What's wrong with your eyes? Can't you recognize her? Wang Xiaoyan was a little surprised and didn't quite believe it. There were some changes in the middle. Shuya changed her appearance, so I didn't recognize her. When Yang Ming introduced Shuya to Wang Xiaoyan, he was in a hurry, so he didn't tell her these details. It turned out to be like this. Wang Xiaoyan was an assassin, so it was easier for her to accept disguises. The car stopped in front of a gorgeous palace. This was the Alice Casino that old Buffon mentioned. Yang Ming paid the fare and got off with Wang Xiaoyan, but he saw that old Buffon was already standing at the door waiting for him. This made Yang Ming a little surprised. A person of old Buffon's status, especially in this kind of public occasion, was still very respectful to him and didn't care about the views of outsiders. This was really rare. Mr. Yang. Old Buffon remembered Yang Ming's instructions. His address to Yang Ming outside changed from Master to Mr. Yang. Why are you waiting for me here? You can just ask someone to pick me up. Yang Ming said helplessly. Old Buffon personally picked him up, which made him become the focus of attention. How can that be? Old Buffon smiled and then whispered, "Don't worry, master. These security guards don't recognize me." Yang Ming nodded and followed old Buffon into the casino with Wang Xiaoyan. They got on the elevator and came to the VIP room on the top floor of the casino. Pushing open the door of a room, Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan walked in with old Buffon. They saw a girl about 15 years old, chatting happily with Shuya. Mrs. Buffon was sitting by the side, listening to the two girls with interest. After Yang Ming came in, the girl smiled apologetically at Shuya, then stood up and greeted Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan. She said gracefully, "Hello, welcome here, Uncle Buffon's guests." Yang Ming was slightly stunned. This girl is the owner of this place. She is only 15 years old, right? Could it be that she is Alice? Seeing that Yang Ming was a little stunned, old Buffon quickly said, "Mr. Yang, this is Miss Alice, the owner of the casino." With old Buffon's affirmation, Yang Ming reached out his hand awkwardly and said, "Hello, Yang Ming. Nice to meet you." Alice shook hands with Yang Ming with a smile, then she pursed her lips and smiled. "Why? Are you curious about my age?" "No, you misunderstood." Yang Ming was exposed, and he was even more embarrassed. "I'm just curious. You should be a Westerner. The name Alice, my surname is AI, and my name is Alice. Can't I?" Alice glared at Yang Ming. She was obviously not satisfied with his excuse. "Okay, hee hee." Yang Ming laughed twice, and his heart was shocked. The legendary Alice is actually a 15-year-old Eastern girl. Moreover, the language she uses is actually Chinese. If old Buffon's Chinese was the kind of strange European and American Chinese, then Alice's Chinese was pure Mandarin. This made it hard for Yang Ming to imagine that a European girl would speak such a standard Chinese. Alice was a fan of Shuya. She sat back on the sofa and chatted with Shuya again. She didn't care about Yang Ming, Wang Xiaoyan, old Buffon, and others. Yang Ming wasn't angry. Although Alice's identity might be very noble, in the end, she was still a 15-year-old child. Why would Yang Ming bother with her? Alice is like this. Don't bother with her. Old Buffon smiled. For this somewhat mysterious Alice, Yang Ming had a feeling that he couldn't figure out for the first time. How can a 15-year-old girl support such a huge business group? "I recognized you when I saw you at first sight that day." Alice said, "I have seen your video record in Macau. It turned out to be like this." Yang Ming sighed. He didn't expect that his limelight in Macau had been known by most people. What's the favor? Since Alice already knew, Yang Ming had nothing to hide and asked directly. "That Korean, I lost. I want to ask you to help me win against him." Alice said, "You can ask for any reward." "Oh, are you so sure that I can win against him? Yang Ming smiled. Besides, I want your casino. Can you give it to me? Yes. Alice nodded with certainty. Alice Casino. I have 67% of the shares in my hand. I can give these shares to you as long as you can win against him. Originally, Yang Ming was just joking, but Alice's answer made Yang Ming somewhat stunned. Really give the casino to me? Are you kidding me? Yang Ming wants this casino, but he has no time to run it. Ugh. I'm just joking. Yang Ming said with some embarrassment. A real man keeps his word. What's wrong? You don't keep your word. Alice looked at Yang Ming contemptuously. Well, I promise you, but I don't want the casino, said Yang Ming. Then what do you want? Asked Alice. I want you. Yang Ming decided to tease this little girl. I'm not an adult yet. Alice was stunned, and then she understood what Yang Ming was referring to. Her face was slightly red. It doesn't matter. I like young ones. Yang Ming said with a weird uncle look, and, according to your local law, 14 years old is considered an adult, right? Alice frowned. After a long while, she asked, Are you serious? Yang Ming nodded. Okay, deal. Alice bit her lip and said, But be careful not to let Xu Ye and Wang Xiaoyan know. Aren't you afraid that I will pester you? Yang Ming didn't expect Alice to agree to this excessive request, and he was a little surprised. He didn't want to compete with the Korean gambling master. Yang Ming came here to see Xu Ye in addition to performing the mission, so he wanted to be low-key and didn't want to become a public figure again. So, after Alice made this request, Yang Ming began to ask for a sky-high price. The first time he asked for this chick's casino, he didn't expect her to agree so readily. So, Yang Ming began to ask for more and put forward more excessive requests. But what Yang Ming didn't expect was that Alice actually agreed. This made Yang Ming very surprised. She can agree to this kind of request. Yang Ming said with some helplessness, I'm just kidding. Are you a man or not? Why are you so fussy? Alice frowned and said with some disdainful sarcasm. Yang Ming was a little annoyed. He thought, I'm not a man. I just don't want to argue with you. Seeing that you are a child, I put forward a few difficult requests to let you know the difficulties and retreat. If it were another person, I would have refused directly. I didn't expect you to agree to these few requests. This made Yang Ming a little angry, especially when he heard Alice say that he wasn't a man. He was even more upset, so he said coldly, I am a clean freak. I don't like second-hand goods. In Yang Ming's view, if Alice could agree to his request, it proved that this chick was more open. He heard that there were many girls in Europe and the United States who had sex at the age of 12 or 13. It wasn't a rare thing at all, so Yang Ming said so. Don't worry. I'm very clean. It's the first time. Although Alice felt that Yang Ming's words were not so pleasant to hear, she still said it. Yang Ming was completely speechless this time. He didn't expect that his continuous difficulties were resolved by Alice. Well, when? Yang Ming sighed with a tone of helplessness. He didn't want to do anything to Alice. Although Alice seemed to have developed in the places that should be developed, this made Yang Ming feel a sense of guilt. Yang Ming had not reached the level of perversion. These 2 days, I will contact you after I arrange it, said Alice. Okay. Yang Ming nodded. Let's talk about it after you arrange it. I hope I haven't left yet. I will tell Uncle Buffon to let you stay for 2 more days, said Alice. Yang Ming thought, Alice probably doesn't know my relationship with old Buffon. She thinks that old Buffon can interfere with my actions, but let her think whatever she wants. Young Ming was not willing to explain too much. Chapter 1138. Charles looked at the backs of Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan and shrugged. He muttered unhappily, "Do you think you are a god? How can you know my dad's whereabouts?" Charles paid the bill and then staggered out of the bar. As soon as he went out, he was surrounded by people. Charles was obviously stunned. "Young master." The leader of the black-shirt men bowed to Charles and said, "Sorry, please come with us, you. How did you find this place?" Charles was stunned and asked inexplicably. "The master is in the car over there." The leader of the black-shirt men said faintly. "AI." Charles couldn't help it. He sighed helplessly. Since things had come to this point, he could only follow the black-shirt men to see his father. Old Charles was sitting in an RV not far away. He was holding a GPS navigation device in his hand. Yang Ming guessed correctly. In Charles's mobile phone, old Charles had already hidden a GPS chip. It was just not easily turned on. When he just called, old Charles felt that something was wrong. He felt that Charles should be nearby, silently observing the movement in the tea room. So old Charles started the GPS positioning device and found Charles's location. Sure enough, Charles was nearby, and he ran from the direction of the tea room to the direction of a bar. Old Charles smiled slightly, got in the RV, and rushed in the direction of the bar. Turning off the GPS device in his hand and hiding the device, old Charles saw his son get in the RV. "Dad." Charles got into the car unhappily and sat at the side. He lowered his head and looked like he was being bullied. Old Charles frowned. "Charles, what do you mean by this? Are you playing hide and seek with me?" "No," Charles said without looking up. "Then what do you mean? You came near the tea room, but you didn't come in and ran away." Old Charles said this and did not forget to explain, "Don't think that my people didn't see you." "Humph. See me? I guess it's probably a GPS chip on my phone or something, right?" Having said that, Charles took out his phone and threw it in front of old Charles. Old Charles was a little embarrassed. He didn't expect this matter to be discovered by Charles. He coughed and changed the topic. "You are not young anymore. Why do you always play racing? Do you know that you still need to inherit the family business?" "Dad, I understand what you mean." Charles suddenly raised his head and said firmly, "Dad, let's have a good talk." "Talk?" Old Charles was stunned and then said, Okay, then let's talk. I'll see what you want to talk to me about." "Dad, I'm not joking. I'm talking to you about this very formally. Also, I hope you can complete this conversation with an equal unfair attitude. I don't want you to always use your own subjective consciousness as the topic." Charles hesitated for a moment and then said, "Oh." Old Charles smiled. "Interesting. Well, I will listen to you. What do you want to talk about?" "Let's talk." "Okay, Dad, I hope you will abide by your promise. After listening to my words, you can be more rational and don't yell," said Charles. "Okay, I am an adult. I am still more rational than you." Old Charles took a breath and said sternly. He also realized that this time, Charles might want to talk to him about the future of his life. Old Charles also knew that in the past few years, the relationship between the father and son had obviously become tense. Old Charles was very sad. He was old, and what he wanted most was for his son to often come to see him and talk to him. But because of the tension, Charles simply ignored him. Charles also avoided him, which made old Charles's heart very uncomfortable. "Dad, in fact, you also know that my ambitions and interests are not to do the assassin's career at all. I have no interest in those things." Charles said, "My hobby is car racing." Only in car racing can I find the joy of my life. Everything else is boring to me. I know this, but if you don't manage the family business, what about the family's businesses? Old Charles sighed and said, I am not young, and I can only hold on for a few years. What should I do then? Don't I care about these brothers who have gone through life and death together? Watch the big assassin group that I built be ruined and disbanded. I really don't want this. Dad, in fact, to put it bluntly, if the family business is in my hands, the ending will still be the same because I am not good at this. Charles said, everyone has their own strengths. Everyone has their own ideals. I don't want you to bind me and let me do things I don't like to do. Not only will I not be happy, but I believe you will not be happy either. You really thought about it. You want to race as a career in the future. Old Charles said such a sentence after a long while. He looked at Charles with some old age. Are you sure? Yes, father. Charles said firmly, I have thought about it. This is my career and my pursuit. I don't want to be an assassin. I want to be a racer and gallop on the track. But, what about the family business? Old Charles was a little helpless. It could be seen that Charles was determined. Otherwise, he would not be so determined. Charles was also a little embarrassed. He also understood that his father valued the family business very much. I personally created a small organization left by your grandfather into a deified assassin world and became the third assassin organization in the world. You can't imagine how much effort I have put in. For me, this assassin group is like my son. Although it is not as important as you, it is also a part of my life. Old Charles said with some helplessness and regret. However, if I had to choose between the assassin group and you, son, would not hesitate to choose you. Charles's tears flowed down in an instant. He originally thought that the career was the first in his father's heart, but he did not expect that his father would say this today. This made the hostility and dissatisfaction in Charles's heart toward his father disappear in an instant. Dad! Charles held his father's hand, and the invisible barrier between the two of them disappeared. Son! Old Charles patted Charles on the shoulder. Well, you are right. I have figured it out. Everyone has their own dreams and pursuits. My dream is to make the assassin group that my father left for me bigger and stronger. I have done it, and I feel the joy of success. So, I shouldn't stop your dream. Since you want to race, then do it. From today onwards, I won't interfere with you anymore. Really? Charles couldn't believe what was happening in front of him. Is this still my stubborn father? Of course, it's true. Old Charles smiled lovingly. Your father is not as unenlightened as you think. At this moment, I have figured everything out. Whatever you want to do, you can do it boldly. I support you. Thank you for your understanding, father. Charles said very excitedly. What is there to say thank you to your own father? Old Charles smiled. But your assassin group. Charles had never considered the assassin group. Whatever he wanted to do had nothing to do with him. However, as the relationship between the father and son eased, Charles had to consider his father's feelings. For the assassin group, I can still support it for a few years. Old Charles said, at that time, I will see if I can find a suitable person to entrust it to. In short, I can't let this assassin group dissipate. It's just that there are too few people who have this ability. Charles listened to his father's words and suddenly thought of Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan whom he met today. Aren't they looking for me to cooperate? Can they take over my family's industry? Wasn't Wang Xiaoyan interested in my family's industry before? Thinking of this, Charles said, Dad, I know two friends who are also assassins. They are trying to talk to me about cooperation. I refused because I don't care about my family's affairs. Now that I think about it, can you cooperate with them? Oh. Old Charles was stunned. You also know people in the assassin world. How do they know your identity? I am also very skeptical about this. My identity has always been very confidential. I don't know how they know. Charles shook his head. Then you have to be more cautious. Don't be a person with bad intentions. Old Charles said, what are their names? I have the business card they left me. Wait a minute. I will find it for you. As Charles said this, he took out the business card that Yang Ming and Wang Xiaoyan had just left him from his pocket and handed it to his father. Black Butterfly Assassin Group. Old Charles was stunned. This assassin group has such a big tone. It is actually called Black Butterfly, which is only one word away from the world's second-ranked butterfly assassin group. Yang Ming, Wang Xiaoyan. Wang Xiaoyan. Is this Wang Xiaoyan a woman? She is a woman. What's wrong? Charles was stunned. Dad, do you know her? Her surname is Wang. This name is so familiar. Is it her? Old Charles fell into contemplation. Dad, what are you talking about? What do you mean by her? Charles was somewhat inexplicable. How old is this girl? Asked old Charles. She should be around 18 or 19 years old. Like us, she is Oriental, said Charles. Then it should be. Old Charles nodded. I didn't expect it to be her. Then it is not surprising that she can know your identity. Moreover, she is actually called Black Butterfly. Interesting. Interesting. Dad, what are you talking to yourself for? Charles was really confused. Nothing. You don't know about the assassin world. Old Charles smiled. However, if it is really that person, I will be relieved to entrust my assassin group to her to help manage it. I really don't understand what you are talking about. Charles shook his head. But it doesn't matter. Since you think they have no problem, then you should meet them when you have the chance. And I will. Old Charles nodded and said, well, we have finished discussing your ideals. Now, can you talk about it? When will you find me a daughter-in-law and give me a grandson? It's fine if you are not with me all day long, but give me a grandson and let me enjoy the happiness of family. Dad. Charles was suddenly embarrassed. The girl I introduced to you before is also good. She has a clean family background. She is very suitable for you. Now I also support your career. How about we find a chance to meet her together? Asked old Charles. Dad, I saw her. I don't like Westerners. I still think that Orientals are beautiful, said Charles. It turns out that you like Orientals. Old Charles nodded and no longer insisted. Well, then you like Orientals. Then you should find one as soon as possible and give me a grandson. I will no longer interfere with your career. Dad, I do like someone, but she doesn't seem to like me. Charles hesitated for a moment, but he still spoke his mind. What do you mean? She doesn't like you. When old Charles heard that his son had a sweetheart, he suddenly became interested. Which girl is it? Father will give you some advice. It is Butler Zhou's daughter. I saw her in Songjiang. Charles said with a red face. Butler Zhou? You mean our family's Butler Zhou? His daughter. Old Charles heard his son's words and suddenly said, oh, I remember. Old Zhou has a daughter. She should be 20 years old now, right? I really didn't expect that time flies so fast. My memory is still stuck in the impression of the little girl when she was 4 or 5 years old. The door of the ward was pushed open, and it was indeed Li Ziqing and Li Tianjia who came in. "Old Huang. I heard that you are awake." Li Ziqing spoke, and his voice was a bit sharp and harsh. Why is your body so weak? You are hospitalized all of a sudden. TSK, that is not a good sign, right? What are you doing here?" Huang Rongtian glared at the father and son of the Li family and asked. "I am here. Of course, I am here to visit an old friend." Li Ziqing smiled. "We have been friends for so many years. You are sick. I naturally have to come and see you. However, I have to bring you an unfortunate news. I heard that recently, people from the bank have occupied your company. They are all there to ask for money." "You?" Huang Xiaofei gasped. "If it weren't for you, would my company be like this? I will not let you go." What does it have to do with me?" Li Ziqing looked like it had nothing to do with him. He snorted. Did you become confused after the cerebral hemorrhage? Are you going to blame everyone? You get lost. You get lost." Huang Xiaofei roared loudly. He covered his heart with one hand and pointed at Li Ziqing with the other hand. "Uncle Huang, what do you mean?" Li Tianjia said, "My father came to see you with good intentions, but you treat him like this. You are really not a good person. You deserve to be fooled all the time. You. Huang Xiaofei's breathing became hurried. Chapter 1139. Li Ziqing, Li Tianjia, you are not welcome here. Huang Rongtian turned around and glared at the two. Please leave immediately. Otherwise, I will call the hospital security. Hey, what's the attitude? Your whole family is not good. No wonder the company went bankrupt. Li Tianjia was still muttering. Paw. There was a crisp sound. Li Tianjia covered his mouth in shock and looked at Huang Lele, who slapped him. What are you doing? Li Tianjia, you are not a man. Huang Lele saw Li Tianjia's smug look, and she was furious. Her father was already in the hospital, and they still added fuel to the fire. She slapped Li Tianjia in anger. Good. Li Tianjia covered his mouth and said good 3 times. Then, he pointed at Huang Lele with a ferocious face. I am not a man. Wait until your Huang family is finished. When you come to beg me, I will let you see if I am a man or not. I asked you to marry me before, but you insisted on being virtuous. Otherwise, would your Huang family fall to this point? You only have yourself to blame for this. Huang Lele was furious. She pointed at Li Tianjia and couldn't speak. Li Tianjia snorted coldly and followed Li Ziqing out of the ward. When he left, he didn't forget to say, if your Huang family doesn't want to be finished, let Huang Lele come to beg me. Be my lover and serve me well. I will help your Huang family to mediate the relationship with the bank. Ha. You get out of here. Huang Rongtian glared at Li Tianjia and said bitterly, no one will beg you. You get out of here. Hey, you really have no manners. Li Tianjia snorted. Outside the ward, Li Ziqing looked at his son proudly. Tianjia, you are good. Today's words are of a standard. A man should be like this. Isn't it just a woman? If you want to get her, you have to be strong. I know, father. Li Tianjia was very satisfied with his behavior today. Li Ziqing patted Li Tianjia's shoulder with satisfaction. If the Huang family wants to get through this difficulty this time, there is no other way except for coming to us. At that time, we will take over all the industries under the Huang family in one fell swoop. At that time, Father, you are really brilliant, Li Tianjia said. In the ward, Huang Xiaofei was very angry. Huang Rongtian, Huang Rongjin, and Huang Leilei comforted him. Dad, don't be angry. We can start all over again. Huang Rongtian sighed. Although he felt that it was a pity, he felt that it was nothing. After all, the brothers still had hands and feet. It was not impossible for them to make a career together. AI. Huang Xiaofei sighed. Is the company over? At this point, Huang Rongtian couldn't lie anymore. He braced himself and nodded, saying, the company is now all here to collect debts. It has already affected normal business. Many companies that cooperate with us have already stopped working with us. Looking at the staff who changed jobs every day and looking at the people from the bank who came to collect debts, they deeply felt that the Huang Group should not be too far away from filing for bankruptcy. Dad, don't be too sad. Yang Ming will definitely have a way. Huang Leilei hesitated and finally said affirmatively. She believed in Yang Ming, the man who brought her miracles. He seemed to be ordinary, but he always gave people unexpected surprises and gains at the critical moment. Just like those days in Macau, whether it was in games or gambling, Yang Ming could always surprise her. Moreover, Huang Leilei also knew that games and gambling were not Yang Ming's career. Yang Ming just regarded these two as very ordinary hobbies. Huang Leilei didn't know how much power Yang Ming had. But she had an inexplicable confidence that there was no problem that could be difficult for Yang Ming. I am really looking forward to this magical boy who can make my proud little princess admire him so much. Huang Xiaofei, who had sobered up, really began to examine the Yang Ming in Huang Leilei's mouth. He had been driven crazy by the gold mine before. He couldn't listen to others, and he had no energy to think about other things. Now, he finally began to think about the magical boy that his daughter said. In just one gamble, he won 40 billion, and he did not hesitate to give it to Huang Leilei. Huang Xiaofei admitted that he did not have such courage. Whether it was when he pursued the first madam or the second madam, he did not have such courage. From this point of view, if Leilei followed this boy, she would definitely be much better than following Li Tianjia. From Li Tianjia's words just now, Huang Xiaofei also saw his hateful face, which made Huang Xiaofei feel that he was really blind at the beginning. He actually asked Huang Leilei to marry such a thing that was worse than a pig or a dog. Perhaps this magical boy could bring some unexpected turnaround to the Huang family. Thinking of this, Huang Xiaofei was slightly relieved. Africa, Country X, the President's Office of General Kar's government. General Kars had been very upset recently. What he did not expect was that his killing of General Howden did not serve as a warning to others, but it caused a backlash from several armed forces. But it was no wonder that these armed forces saw that a powerful force like General Howden was destroyed, so they began to feel insecure. What General Kars was most worried about happened. These armed forces began to frequently contact and meet with each other. This was what General Kars did not want to see the most. Once these people formed an alliance, his position would be in jeopardy. General Kars did not want to be driven out as soon as he came to power. He still wanted to sit in this position for a long time. Although he did not taste any sweetness in this position, it was very refreshing. There was a sense of achievement overlooking the land under his feet. Report. General Kars. General Kars' secretary came in and began to report the latest military information to General Kars. According to reliable news, the armed forces of Shaetsong and Wagoner have formed an alliance and are entrenched in the northern part of our country. I heard that they are also contacting other armed forces to form the Northern Alliance of Country X. General Kars' heart was cold. It finally happened. The alliance finally happened. The alliance of other armed forces made the power of General Kars suddenly become much weaker. Although General Carr's armed forces were the most powerful among these armed forces, no matter how powerful they were, they could not defeat the alliance of others. If all the armed forces were in an alliance, then he did not have to resist. He could just announce his resignation directly. Is the news reliable? General Carr resisted the panic in his heart and asked. Very reliable. General Carr's secretary was a confidant of General Carr's. He was also very worried at the moment. General Carr's, do you think we should make some necessary compromises? If this continues, I am afraid. How to compromise? General Carr's had been thinking about countermeasures for the past few days without sleeping at night, but there was no good way. It was obvious that his own armed forces were certainly no match for the alliance of others. Cede the land and give them the northern part of the country. The secretary hesitated and said. Will they be willing? If we show weakness in this way, the South will form another alliance, the East will follow suit, and the West will form another alliance. Then, what are we left with? Just occupy the central position and become an empty shell government. General Carr sighed and said. Then now. General Carr's secretary was also very troubled. Our current strength has not been fully recovered. If we fight them again, I am afraid, we will still lose. General Carr nodded. He also understood that the secretary was right. Although his position now looked glorious, it was actually precarious. At present, there was no other way except to step down. Ceding the land was just a stopgap measure. In the end, he had nothing. General Carr, there is something that I don't know if I should say. General Carr's secretary hesitated. At this time, what else can't you say? You have followed me everywhere. Although you are my secretary, you are like my confidant. Said General Carr. Look, can you contact Mr. Yang? Can you cooperate with Mr. Yang? Said General Carr's secretary. General Carr sighed. How could he not think about Yang Ming? However, he really had nothing to give Yang Ming. Especially in the current period, many minds were within the scope of other armed forces. He could not promise anything at all. In this case, can Mr. Yang help me? General Carr smiled bitterly. Mr. Yang's armed forces are an organization that values interests. Without enough benefits, how can they make a move? However, this is the only way now. There's no other way. General Carr's secretary advised, General, no matter what, you have to give it a try. Otherwise, we are really finished. It is hard to say whether we can retreat. Once these alliances are formed, they will definitely kill us. There is absolutely no possibility for us to make a comeback. General Carr nodded. What the secretary said was true. These armed forces were not charitable ambassadors. After being ousted by them, they would never let him have the possibility to turn things around. Thinking of this, General Carr nodded and said, well, help me to meet Mr. Li Chang. Tell him that I have something to discuss. Yes, General Carr. General Carr's secretary nodded. Forget it. Prepare the car. I will visit Mr. Li Chang personally. At this time, General Carr did not dare to be arrogant. If Li Chang did not come, then there would be a crack in his relationship with him. It was better for him to visit in person now to show sincerity. Okay. The secretary quickly went to prepare the car. After Li Chang learned that General Carr was going to visit him, he did not seem to be too surprised. After all, he also established his own intelligence network in North Africa. Li Chang was also clear about the alliance of several armed forces in the north. However, these things had nothing to do with him for the time being, so Li Chang stepped up his training while keeping an eye on the movements in the north. Li Chang dialed Yang Ming's phone. At this moment, Yang Ming was watching Shuya's concert. Hello. Seeing that it was an unfamiliar number, Yang Ming picked up the phone. Few people knew his phone number, especially this kind of unfamiliar number. It was even rarer. "Brother Yang, this is Li Chang." Li Chang said, "There is something I want to report to you." "And, what's the matter?" "Say it." Yang Ming glanced at Alice beside him, lowered his voice and said faintly. "General Karsh just called and said that he wanted to visit me," said Li Chang. "Oh. So during this time, what happened over there?" Yang Ming guessed at once that something must have happened in Country X. This is the case. Several armed forces in the north have formed an alliance, which poses a great threat to General Karsh's government, said Li Chang concisely. "And I know. You should do what you should do." "I don't need to tell you again, right?" said Yang Ming. "I understand, Brother Yang. You can rest assured." Li Chang nodded and said affirmatively. "Okay, you are in charge of the things over there." "Don't let me down," said Yang Ming. "Do not worry, Brother Yang. I will not let you down. Look at me." Li Chang promised. "Well, let's do this first." "I am watching the concert here," said Yang Ming. Previously, Li Chang had already received Yang Ming's hint. Naturally, he knew Yang Ming's development strategy and policy in Country X, so this time, he took the initiative to negotiate with General Karsh. Therefore, when General Karsh's fleet entered the gold mine, Li Chang was very arrogant and did not come out to greet them. He just sent Wang Peng to meet them. But even so, General Karsh was not angry. He shook hands with Wang Peng in a friendly manner and exchanged pleasantries. "General Wang has always been good." General Karsh also addressed Wang Peng as a general, but from the perspective of these people under Wang Peng deserved to be called a general. "Welcome, General Karsh." Wang Peng nodded to General Karsh. "Captain Li is waiting for you." "Please." General Karsh saw Li Chang in a high-level reception room. Seeing the arrival of General Karsh, Li Chang stood up and shook hands with General Karsh. Then, they sat back in their respective positions and began this discussion. "General Li, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to see me," said General Karsh politely. "Just call me Captain Li. I am not used to the title of general." Li Chang smiled faintly. "If Mr. Yang knows that I am a self-proclaimed general, he will be unhappy." Well said, then I will call you Mr. Li." General Karsh quickly changed his words. "Mr. Li, what happened recently? I think you should know something, right?" "Oh. I don't know what General Karsh is referring to," asked Li Chang. "This is the case. In the north of our country, several armed forces have formed the Northern Alliance." General Karsh didn't know if Li Chang knew these things, so he could only repeat what he knew. This is also a disguised control of Country X's political power. Indeed, General Karsh is no different from Brother Yang's men. He is even lower than us. Li Chang also nodded. However, it is much better than driving him out of office. After General Karsh returned to his presidential palace, he was also at a loss. Indeed, Li Chang's words were very realistic but very reasonable. If he wanted Li Chang to send troops, then what could he give them? General Karsh also came from a war background. He knew that once these armored vehicles, tanks, and even bombers were put into operation, what a huge military expenditure it would be. General Karsh couldn't afford this money. He couldn't even use these gold mines and diamond mines to pay off the debt. Therefore, if he wanted Li Chang to send troops, then there was only one possibility, which was cooperation. How could he cooperate? After Li Chang helped him conquer the world, would he let Yang Ming be the president? Would he be the vice president? Not to mention whether Yang Ming was willing or not, the title of vice president was not very pleasant to hear. If a president became the vice president, his power would be reduced by more than half, and he would also be laughed at by others. It's really a headache. General Kars frowned and looked at the secretary on the side. Do you have any better ideas? General Kars, the situation is like this now. If I have a better way, can I not say it? The secretary also frowned. The only way now is to see the reply from Mr. Yang, that's the only way. General Kars nodded. As soon as General Kars finished speaking, there was a knock on the door of the office. General Kars put away his sad face and said, "Please come in." Reporting to General Kars, it's not good. According to our intelligence network monitoring, several armed forces in the south have also begun to move. There are signs of an alliance. The person who came in was an intelligence officer and one of General Kars' confidants. What? After General Kars heard it, he slammed his fist on the table. These armed forces had long been seen that they were restless. When he just came to power, they were still peaceful. Now that the North had formed an alliance, they had also begun to form an alliance. Now it was really urgent. General Kars took a deep breath. He couldn't wait anymore. He had to call Li Chang immediately to ask about the progress of the matter. Otherwise, when the alliance of the South and the North arrived, it would be too late. Thinking of this, General Kars quickly picked up the phone and dialed Li Chang's number. "Captain Li, it's General Kars' call." Lu Xinyang glanced at the caller ID on the phone. "Oh. Hee, then pick it up." Li Chang reached out and took the phone, then pressed the answer button. "Hello, General Kars, why did you call me again when you just left?" Li Chang pretended to be very puzzled and asked. In fact, this was the case where the onlooker saw the game clearly. General Kars was in the game. Although the alliance between the South and the North was unlikely to launch an attack on General Kars felt that things were at stake, and he would be affected soon. Li Chang was outside the game, and he did not have the sense of urgency of General Kars. In his opinion, these armed forces alliances were not worth mentioning. There was no threat to Li Chang at all, so Li Chang had this feeling of not caring at all. "General Kars, you are really punctual. I just ended the call with Brother Yang, and your call came in." Li Chang laughed. How could General Kars still have the mood to tease Li Chang at the moment? He was not in the mood to respond to Li Chang's laughter. He just said, "Captain Li, is there any news from Mr. Yang?" "Yes, Brother Yang has put forward a general plan after consideration. I will relay it to you. You see if it is feasible," said Li Chang. Okay. General Kars heard that Yang Ming had a plan, and he suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. The big stone that had been pressed down in his heart for the past few days had finally been removed. At least he had hope, so he quickly asked excitedly, "What did Mr. Yang say?" "This is the case. Brother Yang said that if you want us to send troops, it is possible. However, according to the current situation, we will not get much benefit by sending troops. So Brother Yang's opinion is that in the future, only our army exists in country X," said Li Chang. "And?" General Kars was slightly stunned and understood Li Chang's meaning. Li Chang was asking for military power from him, so General Kars quickly asked, "What about me?" Of course, Mr. Yang is not interested in civil affairs. Brother Yang said that if we cooperate between the two sides, you will still be the president, but we will take back all the military power. However, we will not interfere with your civil affairs. Li Chang said, "But you have to give us a part of the annual fiscal revenue." How could General Kars not understand Li Chang's meaning? If it was really implemented according to Yang Ming's method, then Yang Ming would become the retired emperor of country X. Who did not understand that no matter how great the power of the president was, it was useless if there was no military power in his hands. Yang Ming controlled the military power. If he wanted to replace you, it would be a piece of cake. However, this request was not unacceptable to General Kars. After all, if all the armed forces in the country were dealt with by Yang Ming, he could be the president with peace of mind. Although there was still Yang Ming, the retired emperor, to suppress him, at least he was still very impressive. He still had the right to speak in most political matters. As long as he listened to Yang Ming's arrangement on major matters, it was fine. This was a bit like the relationship between the emperor and the prime minister in the past. Thinking of this, General Kars was calm. In this matter, although there were pros and cons, the pros outweighed the cons. On the one hand, because of the intervention of Yang Ming, he could continue to be the president. On the other hand, although he handed over the military power, Yang Ming would never allow other armed forces to exist in Country X. He would remove all these armed forces. In this way, Country X would no longer be shrouded in war. He could also have a comfortable governing environment, and he could develop the construction of Country X with great fanfare. Thinking of this, General Kars felt that this was a good thing. Otherwise, in this war-torn country, he was a temporary president, and he would not be treated as a president at all. I have no problem here. General Kars said firmly, Captain Lee, when do you think we can have a detailed discussion? I am looking forward to this cooperation very much. Well, I will ask Brother Yang here, and then I will give you an answer, said Li Chang. Okay, then I will trouble you, Captain Lee. I will wait here for the good news. General Kars breathed a sigh of relief. He could finally sleep peacefully.